Call our meeting of the mid-month, February the 15th meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order. At this time, we'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Luckman, please.
Let us pray, please. Dear Heavenly Father God, we thank you for another day here on one of the most beautiful spots on planet Earth, Alleghany County. We thank you for good friends and neighbors and good health. And we pray that you will be with us, watch over us, and as the county's governing board, help us to make good decisions for the welfare of our citizens. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Michelle. No changes to the agenda. Do I hear a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Move and second. All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Trust everybody's looked over the minutes from 119, 125, 128, and the 2-1 work session. I hear a motion to accept.
Move, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion, here a second.
Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you. It's time to move on down to public comment. We'll open the floor for public comment. If anyone has anything to talk about, that would be the time. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Presentation of the board. Earthquake update, Mr. Daniel Rote.
Sorry, that's a little odd. Good morning. Drew,
Morning.
is Dr. Taylor on? I have a few comments that I'll make. I'm going to try to keep my comments short out of respect for Dr. Taylor's time. But we all know we had a few more aftershocks the other day. I think on the 3rd we had a couple, a 2.2 and a 2.6. And then on the 8th, a 1.8. So interestingly enough, the 3rd, the day that we had the 2 aftershocks, was the day that I approached the county manager and the chairman about rescinding our state of emergency. So we did that, and then that night, I guess God has an interesting sense of humor. He decided we should have a couple more. So, but at any rate, we're no longer under state of emergency because of the earthquake. Should the need arise, we can always reinstitute another one. But that brings our total up to 302 seismic events now, all told. In a little update to where we're at with recovery, the demolition project on a few of the homes on Deer Haven Road and Little River Drive is about to begin. The bid packets for that demolition went out. The state, of course, is handling all that. I think that period closed on the 11th, and they're reviewing them, and they'll be awarding that bid next week for demolition, probably to begin end of the month or sometime early March, and then rebuilding. So, if you guys have any questions for me, I'll go ahead and take those so I can step aside for Dr. Taylor.
How many total houses are taken down?
It's a moving target right now. Like I said, I know we're going to start with 4. We'll probably be in the 8 to 10 range realistically. Some of the homes really are in really poor shape, but a bigger home, they've told me if it's a 3,000 square foot home, it's not very cost effective to take that down and rebuild it versus perhaps repairing it. So there's some of those discussions going on too.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'm going to yield the floor to Dr. Kenneth Taylor, the state geologist. I think you guys asked for some information on fault lines and seismic events and how they measure it and all that stuff, and there's no one in the state that's any more qualified to talk that than Dr. Kenneth Taylor. So I yield.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to brief you about this. I have a small, short presentation. If that would be okay with you, we could switch to the presentation and share the screen. Is that all right, sirs?
Yes.
Disable. You gotta let us have the screen.
Control. We need control of the screen, please.
We need control of the screen.
Try it again. Okay.
Okay.
Click that
Okay, got
and
it.
then share.
I don't feel so bad.
All right. Can you see the PowerPoint presentation now?
Yes.
There.
Okay, excellent. This is basically a presentation I did at the Emergency Management Association. I wanted y'all to sort of understand that a magnitude 5.1 is not a infrequent earthquake that we have in North Carolina. Advance. Basically, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about earthquakes, tectonics, and faults, earthquakes in the southeast and central Appalachians, the damage in Sparta, the Little River Fault in the field and drone mapping that was done, as well as the young faults that are crossing the Blue Ridge.
Down or to the right.
All right. This is a map showing the world and showing the period of time of about a 1 year period of time, showing all the magnitude 5.1s, or ones that are equivalent to the one in Sparta that occurred back in October. The idea to look at this and see is that most of those earthquakes are occurring along fault boundaries that are called tectonic plate boundaries, and this is where a lot of the earthquake activity occurs throughout the world. So it's relatively rare for a magnitude 5 to pop up in the middle of western North Carolina. One of the things we talk about when we look at describing things, we talk about the orientation of something, and we look at its strike, its dip, and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk to you a lot of these things about what we've seen as the plane that had the failure on it. There are two steps in here. There's a lower block on a fault plane. You just see the red line there showing the fault plane. And the foot wall is like you're standing on it. That's the foot wall. And the hanging wall is what's hanging on top of it. And what happened was the earthquake was a reverse fault that caused the hanging wall to move up versus the foot wall. And this is where you saw the offset of the earthquake, or of the earthquake fault at the surface in parts of Sparta and in the areas around where there was lots of damage. The Appalachian Mountains are there for a reason, because of collisions, and as the time has progressed, it's been moving for over 200 million years, so stresses build up, and it happens to be on inclined planes like these faults, and you'll have an earthquake. Previous big earthquakes from inside the plate are like Charleston in 1886, magnitude 6.9 to a magnitude 7.3 for that earthquake. That caused about $160 million in today's dollars in there, and there were about 60 casualties. And you see the earthquake was felt all the way up in New England, all the way up into Michigan and stuff like that from that earthquake back in 1886. Previously, we've had earthquakes in North Carolina, such as the Skylands quake in 1916. That was estimated to be a magnitude 5.2, which is roughly the same size as the one you had in Sparta. This was one where if you look there and see on the map and look to the extreme west side of the map and see where St. Louis is, the earthquake station that was located in St. Louis University, where I got my doctorate in, they actually recorded the earthquake in the Skyland earthquake back in 1916. And there it shows on there the horizontal east-west and north-south that showed the ground shaking in St. Louis being recorded from the earthquake on that other end of the countryside. So that's 775 kilometers, or about 470 miles away from where the earthquake occurred in North Carolina. Previous earthquakes in the east, there was the Mineral Virginia earthquake. For Mineral Virginia, you had a huge amount of earthquake reports for that magnitude 5.8. And then you look at there and see in California, where it's a much smaller area. The eastern United States, that being east of the Rockies, is old and cold, and therefore it carries the seismic waves further and longer. The ones in California, the ground or the earth is warm and it's brittle, and it basically does not allow the earthquake waves to travel as far. So for two earthquakes of almost the exact same size, a 5.8 in Virginia and a 6.0 in California, you see the felt area for it was 10 or more times larger. For Sparta, the USGS got 140,000 responses. One of them was my daughter. She lives in Ashe County. She said it was feeling like a truck was driving underneath the house. There were no fatalities or serious injuries. There were 5 foreshocks, and there were about 200 plus aftershocks. The one most recently probably comes up to be about 250. Now, there are active seismic zones around Sparta. One of them is a Central Virginia seismic zone. You see to the upper left. You also see the Giles County seismic zone, which might be partially connected to what caused Sparta. And then you have Eastern Tennessee seismic zone. All the green dots are earthquake locations over a period of time. And this came from our colleagues up in Virginia. So when you look at that and see that one of the key things that picked up on it is the first indication of an actual fault rupture at the surface. This was a Little River fault that occurred from the earthquake, and it basically was about 2.5 kilometers or about a mile and a half in length, and that was where the actual ground broke. It actually broke the surface. The star there shows the estimated location for the magnitude 5.1, but you're looking at the surface expression of it. When you look at it in depth, it would be down below that plane and on it where the earthquake occurred. And that's why the rupture occurred like it did. There was basically 500 structures damaged, estimates with $15 million. That's from Alleghany County, as well as some of the stuff from the USGS. The Little River Fault is not a continuous break line. It's a broken in pieces and places. There will be places like, for example, along the river where you'd expect there not to be much to be seen because the earth at the surface there is very pliable and you wouldn't see a good indicator. This is an idea of showing where the area was across where there's deformation along the area. Here's some of the damage. You all have seen this umpteen times before. I just want to indicate that the number one thing seeing happening in an earthquake of this magnitude would be damage to chimneys and other kinds of tall masonry, unreinforced masonry kind of structures. Like, for example, the chimneys breaking in half, breaking fully off the building and stuff like that. A lot of the concrete block wall, there's not cement poured into the actual openings in as concrete blocks, so the wall is not nearly as strong as it could be. In California, of course, they require that to be fully filled with concrete and rebar included in it to make it stronger. But that's because the earthquake hazard in California is much, much greater than North Carolina. Once again, you see that stair-step pattern showing where the building failed, and that's where the fail point was. It basically started at the windows and worked their way downward to the outside. We also had rotation and slippage of tombstones and the and markers in the graves or in the cemeteries. And a big part of that was this rotation can give us an idea of how much of the motion was going up, but also how much of the motion was going side by side. These are cracks in the roads. These are also cracks that occurred due to slide related. The one that has the rock hammer on the extreme right side there shows where the slope was too steep, and that's why part of the slope slipped off. And that's not an earthquake fault. That's an actual failure due to the wall, or sorry, due to the slopes partially collapsing. This was one where there was damage and an infrastructure issue. You see where the road buckled up because that's where the hanging wall reached the surface and broke along that road. That was fixed by the DOT, I think, the next day. You can also see places where the ground moved up in the area near the Scots, their company right there. This shows you an example. One of the professors there from UNC Chapel Hill shows this looking like almost 3 or 4 inches of displacement where the hanging wall rose and the foot wall stayed where it was. So you ended up having that difference in elevation. So the hanging wall is where he's standing and it went up over the foot wall. Once again, it's a reverse fault like I've shown before where the top of it moves up, the one part moves up, the hanging wall moves up, and the foot wall moves down. This is a trench that was cut at the location and shows the actual fault itself. That's 2 of the staff from the North Carolina Geological Survey there, and one of the folks from USGS. And the biggest thing about that is that that's where we have the first ground breakage of an earthquake on the eastern United States ever. They're excavating that out right now. They dug a nice trench and they got this information from it. A lot of colleagues came in from NC State and other places to look at it, to get information about it. Once again, you see the hanging wall rose up above the foot wall. You can even see crenulations here because the whole building that's a metal building actually got shrunk a little bit because they were on the fault. So that's why you see the crenulation there. Sort of interesting indication of the movement of the building and how it was compressed by the fault movement. This gives you some examples of showing that it's a very complex fault, but the key thing about it is that you can see movement along it, and that's recent movement from the actual earthquake. The plane is dipping about 75 degrees downward, and the whole thing about it is this sort of shows you that there's iron staining on there. There's a magnesium oxide coating on it, which means this fault's moved before. This gives an example of showing that you're talking about it being along this profile here between A and A prime and B prime there. You're talking about 10 centimeters or 12 centimeters of actual motion that basically stepped up between those. So it really clearly indicates where the movement of the fault occurred. And you see once again, the hanging wall, the HW, rode up over the foot wall. Once again, you see the hanging wall riding up on the foot wall here where the water line was broken, but also the buckled road. This is fixed up. This was a day later or next day, and DOT had already fixed the problem already, and that was the end of it. There was a lot of places where the staff went out and trenched to look and see things. There were some places where the soil is very soft, and therefore you didn't really see any example of there being offset. You can sort of see where the little line you see there in the information from the drone, you can see sort of that line going between the hanging wall and the foot wall on that, and showing the orientation of the rupture. Here's some more dramatic places where you can see the rupture very, very easily there, where the hanging wall rode up over the foot wall, and this is in the woods west of River Edge Road. About 20 centimeters of vertical offset was occurred. Okay. The seismicity around Sparta this is the earthquake activity that's been showing that was collected. The folks from the University of Memphis, the Center for Earthquake Research and Information, put a station out there and several stations out there in Sparta after the first 2 or 3 aftershocks or foreshocks had occurred, and they actually recorded the magnitude 5.1 right there at the site. And it's very dramatic to see where the records basically show movement occurring on a period of about 3 to 4 minutes. This gives you an idea of looking at and seeing the fault plane. This is the estimated fault plane, and then that's where the magnitude 5.1 is located. It's not on the plane, but I have a feeling that when they relocate all of these earthquakes together as an ensemble, it would get to line up or very close to line up where that fault plane is. And that's really what was the triggering event that started the earthquake sequence. So one of the key things about it as we look at there and see is that this is one of the fault planes that when you have a focal mechanism like this, it gives you an idea of how the earthquake actually broke. And it gives you 2 possible solutions. And the one that's marked in red there is probably the best one for the plane that actually broke in this earthquake. There will probably be many graduate students and such that will be working on this and doing papers on this in the foreseeable future. North Carolina Geological Survey, we're sort of like, we deal with it at the present, and then that's it. Let someone else finish off that with other information. Okay. There are other structures that go across this area, so it's not the only place we could have earthquakes in the immediate future. But we don't typically have earthquakes of magnitude 5 except for on the order of hundreds of years apart. There's the Sparta fault and all the earthquakes associated with the Sparta earthquake. And then you see the Boone fault and seeing there's other earthquakes associated with that. One of the staff that works for the North Carolina Geological Survey right now, Jesse Hill, he finished his doctorate at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill with Kevin Stewart. Kevin Stewart, this is one of the things they were very fascinated about, of finding this fault that they didn't know that existed before. The Boone Fault really is a northwest striking fault, and it cuts through all kind of things. The key thing about it is that this is one of those areas where you have to think about it being, could this break in some time in the future? Yes. Did it break a long time ago? We don't know. So in capping up here, this is the first documented surface rupture of a modern fault in the southeast United States. The south-southeast striking thing was basically activated by the magnitude 5.1. The reverse faulting dips about 20 to 45 degrees to the southwest, and it's about 2.5 kilometers of on echelon fault strands there. So in terms of looking at it for being, one of the key things I want the commissioners to understand is, could there be a magnitude 4 tomorrow? Maybe. Could there be a magnitude 2 tomorrow? Probably. Could it be a magnitude 1? Maybe. But the key thing comes down to is we're not expecting to have an earthquake anywhere near the size of the magnitude earthquake that occurred. Each step on the Richter scale from a magnitude 5.1 down to a magnitude 4.1 is a 30 times difference. So it takes 30 magnitude 4.1s to equal the energy in a magnitude 5.1. So when you look and see there's been small earthquakes around here, the magnitude 2 and 3s and stuff like that, you're talking about them being 900 times smaller than the earthquake of the magnitude 5.1. But if you have fragile buildings that have been already damaged by the 5.1, there would be a possibility of having more damages in those buildings because they've already been critically broken. Are there any questions?
Sir, Commissioner Irwin's got a question here. Bobby?
Thank you, Dr. Taylor, for the information. My question is, do you think that there needs to be any change in the building codes for this region?
The key thing comes down to it is the building codes are an engineer's domain, not a seismologist's domain. But as a seismologist, I would indicate to y'all that had some of those concrete block buildings that had foundations or that everything below the living floors were open block that did not have any cement in them. It would be nice to put that where it would give more strength to that foundation and such. There might not have been that much damages or that extensive damage on that. One of the biggest things I look at and see is, as a seismologist, I've chased earthquakes all over the country, and a lot of times when you arrive there and see, for example, an entire ceiling tile system at a school, I mean, the entire school, when I went to Ashtabula to a magnitude 5.2 earthquake, every single piece of the ceiling tile, all of it failed. All of it failed at one time, and all of it failed because of a magnitude 5.2 earthquake. Now, that causes a great deal of impact to a school. Those schools had to be cleaned out and cleaned and fixed up and stuff like that. But one of the critical parts about it is putting wires between those panels to keep more strength and stuff like that. That's sort of the retrofit that I did in North Carolina, in the western part of the state, when I first came on as the earthquake planner. I started with emergency management, North Carolina Emergency Management, back in 1994, and I was put in charge of retrofitting schools for decrease their earthquake hazard. And a lot of that was getting the stuff done to make sure stuff was bolted down, but also that the ceiling tile system was completely and totally taken care of, so you wouldn't have to worry about that falling on the children.
Thank you.
Anyone have any further questions?
I have a question.
Michelle?
That was very informative. I really appreciate that. My question to you is, I know you don't have a crystal ball or anything, but do you expect this to calm down? What should we look for in the future?
In the future, I would look in there and see that when our colleagues from Memphis State University had their seismic network out, they were recording earthquakes that were as small as -1. That's from, on the Richter scale. Those won't even be felt by anybody. They'll only be recorded by instruments because it's just too small. I'm sure there are earthquakes happening now, but it's a matter of because they have moved back to Memphis and picked up the network there. We won't see all the little teeny ones that are happening, but the ones that are basically the magnitude 2.5 and greater there, you'd know what happened because you felt it. So I would look at there and see that my thing would be the number of earthquakes and the frequency of the earthquakes will diminish over time as they did after the magnitude 5.1. And over time, it will come back to be where, okay, there's not a real problem with that. But I also look at there and see, is it as your EM director said, it's always good to look at some of these houses again sometimes and see if there's been additional damages that cause some other critical part to get broken again or broken worse.
Thank you.
Any other questions? John? No. Sir, I believe you answered a lot of questions we had with your program you presented this morning. It's been very informative, and we certainly appreciate you taking your time out to join us today.
I thank you for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you. Daniel, you have anything further?
I'm all done, unless you have questions for me.
Anybody got any questions for Daniel? No. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Nick Hawks.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Sheriff couldn't be with us this morning, but I'm here to let y'all guys know what we did throughout the year of 2020. It was obviously a difficult year for everyone, including us. It did change some of our numbers just because of the way things was, what all was happening throughout the year. The pandemic was a big focus for everyone. So I'll read a message from the sheriff, and then we'll get started into our statistics. If y'all have any questions, just ask me. All right, so from the sheriff, He said, as your sheriff, I set a goal that we would run a sheriff's office that would be transparent and accountable to the people of Alleghany County. This report is designed to give you, the board, and the citizens of Alleghany County a tangible measurement of services delivered by me and my team. I hope that on your review of this report, you will be pleased with the success we have had during such an unusual and trying year. This report reflects the dedication provided by the hardworking men and women of the Alleghany County Sheriff's Office. Our mission statement, vision statements. Alleghany County Sheriff's Office facilitates justice and provides public safety through proactive law enforcement, emergency communication services, and community education to all we are entrusted to serve. Our vision, the Alleghany County Sheriff's Office staff will continuously invest in the people of Alleghany County through community partnerships. And we have a three-pronged, multifaceted approach, which is prevention, and strong enforcement, and post-vention strategies. So for our deputies' numbers. Deputies' total calls for service this year was 6,677 calls. That is an average of 18 calls per day. That is folks calling in saying they need a deputy for some type of reason. They logged 23,996 events. So that 6,677 would be included in the 23,000 events. The other things are self-generated, business checks, traffic stops, various other things. So the guys have been busy this year. We've arrested 451 folks. 147 drug cases were opened this year, and the seizure amounts totaled $71,613 in seized drugs. Served 713 civil papers. We had 33 involuntary commitments. There were 58 domestic violence orders, 13,451 business checks. We investigated 511 cases. So let me touch on the investigated cases and the drug cases. Those numbers are good, solid numbers. That shows that a lot's going on. But what it doesn't show is the time. You may have a deputy that makes a traffic stop and ends up with 3 or 4 drug charges, and the duration of time for those 3 or 4 drug charges may be 3 hours. You may have one case that opens up where numerous hours to weeks to upwards of months, on one case. So numbers do vary. I just wanted to let you know that. Same way with cases. You may have a case, depending on what it is, that may be, simple in nature, that only requires, a day's worth of work. You have cases that run numerous months as well. So stolen property recovered this year, $193,318. That was 86% recovery rate. So 86% of the stolen items was recovered. That's a large number. And that includes, recoveries for other agencies as well, outside the county even. We keep up with all of that. We assisted other law enforcement agencies 245 times. We assisted EMS on calls 57 times. We assisted DSS 47 times. And just the patrol deputy mileage was 202,650 miles this year. That's from 10 of the guys that's making the rounds in the marked cars. That does not count my mileage, the sheriff's mileage, the detective's mileage. Issued 286 pistol purchase permits. We had 69 funeral escorts. We issued 171 new concealed carry permits, and we renewed 194. We collected $13,617.50 in concealed carry funds. We brought in $4,323 in civil process fees, $1,430 in pistol purchase permits. Our drug revenues this year from some asset forfeitures from working with other counties, we brought in $49,000. We wrote $286,898.91 in grants this year. We have additionally prepped $228,760 for next year. Our canines, we have 3 canines. 2 are patrol canines, which are the German Shepherds, and we have 1 bloodhound. We've been pretty fortunate. We was able to pick up both the Shepherds through some fundraising, and Virginia Department of Corrections, prisons, donated us 1 bloodhound this year, or last year, I'm sorry.
We can run, but we can't hide.
Run, but we can't hide. That's right. They were deployed, so these numbers are actually just for the 2 patrol dogs. I don't have tracking numbers as of now. So the two shepherds were deployed 116 times. Out of the 116 times, they alerted 89 times. They brought in 159 drug charges. Training approximately 200 hours. And they seized 371.55 grams of meth, 232 grams of marijuana, 3.7 grams of heroin, 1.7 grams of MDMA, which is ecstasy, and less than a gram of cocaine. And also, out of the mix, we ended up with 44 dosage units of prescription pills. Our school resource officers, of course, they're assisting school staff daily, providing security checks, parking lot safety checks. They're assisting students on a daily basis with a variety of issues. And on average, an SRO will make approximately 4,500 steps during their day. So they're doing a lot of walking. The detention center booked in 271 inmates. That obviously is a direct reflect. You can see the difference between the arrest and the inmates that's actually going into the jail facility. A lot of that has to do with COVID from this year. Like I said, it's been a trying year for us with COVID, and you know, the amount of folks that's going in is certainly much less due to that pandemic. Simply being, if we get an outbreak, and we've been fortunate, we have not had an outbreak in the jail, it could be very expensive. Female inmates booked this year was 83. Our average daily male population, 23. That's significantly lower than prior years. Our average female population was 7. We generated about $1,553 from the Oasis Commissary. We brought in $102,416.12 from our SMCP state program, housing state inmates. We had 498 transports for a total of 32,351 miles traveled.
Is that in addition to the 202,000?
That is separate. Yeah. So the communications center, total calls for service received this year. The dispatch center received 13,099 emergency calls through the 911 system. This does not include telephone calls that are received from non-emergency lines or other dispatch entities. Of that, of those calls, the sheriff's office was responsible for 51% of those. Police, fire, EMS, the rest was 49% of them. Our victim services group, which is 100% grant funded, assisted 212 victims, and they logged 298 crisis calls. So the victim services unit, once someone has become a victim of a crime, they're tasked with a lot of day-to-day assistance with those victims to get them the services that they need, to attend court with them and assist them with court, explaining processes. They have a lot to do. Also, if there's any type of crisis issues, if they're suffering from some type of problem, from being exposed to some type of crime, you know, they're assisting with those as well. Courthouse Security, there was 15,251 visits. Obviously, that's a lot lower than previous years, all simply due to the COVID. Public assistance, our deputy assisted the public 2,584 times, confiscated 78 weapons. Most of them's going to be pocket knives, about all of them. Issued 88 verbal warnings. He arrested 2 and conducted 498 security checks of the courthouse. Our collected revenues this year totaled $173,102.35. And additionally, we wrote $228,760 in grants. So it's a pretty good year considering. The goals accomplished so far: drugs and violence prevention program in the schools, build strong drug enforcement strategies and policies for the officers. Senior Citizens Academy, of course, that's on hold right now due to the pandemic. Inmate worker program, community watch program, church safety awareness project, certified school resource officers in all the Alleghany County schools, community educational programs, the Are You OK program, Sheriff Safety Day, updated and advanced equipment for all the deputies. Crisis intervention certified officer on each of the shifts, grant-funded deputy positions, intensive sex offender checks, field training program. We've implemented that now in both. We've been doing it for a long time with the deputies. We implemented it in Communication Center last year, and we have some detention officers that we're trying to get through a certification program here shortly. Annual Law Enforcement Memorial, of course, the sheriff does this prior to flagpole. More accountability and monthly newspaper stats. We're doing the best we can about keeping people informed, things that's going on. Of course, all of our patrol deputies have body cameras. We have the 3 canines. The youth safety program, we're going to the schools with DWI and distracted driving courses. GPS technology in all the patrol cars now. Of course, everyone has CAD now in our mobile CAD in our patrol cars. It's really helpful. Performance-based team awards, certified school building safety inspector. We sent one of our deputies last year through a school for school safety and building safety inspections. Implemented the first ever FTO program in the dispatch center. Social media safety and information videos. Of course, we have the 2 narcotics officers now, thankfully. We have started the EMD process. We have everyone EMD certified. Now we're looking to push forward with the equipment and upfitting the communication center with a 2-seat system, ever how that turns out. Operation identification, and we have placed a peer support specialist in the jail. Of course, right now they're not going in just because of the COVID. 2021 goals, of course, add the 2nd seat to the dispatch center, expand the Sheriff Safety Day, implement additional FTO training for the jail, continue to add new and additional training for all staff, and local media from the Sheriff's desk. He's wanting to start a new from the Sheriff's desk, maybe with Charlie. And drug prevention program phase 2, hopefully we can start it at the high school. And educational class on the importance of house numbers. Future goals, we hope eventually to get to a Crime Stoppers program, the Sheriff's Youth Camp, expand current Senior Citizens Academy, hopefully go to a phase 2 in a Community Watch program, and eventually we'd like to get to a national accreditation with our agency through CALIA. Yellow Dot program, business check identifications, and hopefully much more. More for the community. He's got the Coats for Kids, canned food drive, senior scam prevention presentations, and Operation Christmas Child, which again for the 2nd year was a success. In closing, I wish to close by thanking the communities throughout Alleghany County for their support for our Sheriff's Office. It truly takes a group effort between our citizens, staff, and local government to help us accomplish our mission of improving the quality of life in Alleghany County. Do y'all have any questions?
Any questions? Mark?
Do, the IVCs, now is this for the calendar year that ended in
Calendar year.
December?
Yes.
Okay. The IVCs you reported on there were 33.
Yeah.
How is that trend compared to previous years? Do you,
It stays pretty consistent.
okay, that hadn't really changed?
Yeah,
with-
and that's overall. That's all of them. We count though. Well, that would be all of them with the exception of if the town had one that maybe got squashed at the hospital and didn't go on, they might turn in that paperwork that we never received. But that's just about all of them, with the exception of that, because we count all of them because we transport.
They're running
well,
about
so.
consistent with the previous year?
Pretty
years?
consistent.
Okay. On the area of victims, crisis calls, victim assistance, crisis calls, are those about the same, up or down? How's that trend?
So this is the first year that we've actually been able to collect those numbers. It's the first year that we've had a full-time victim services unit. In past years, we had Lee who assisted in a part-time basis. So hopefully next year we'll be able to
What's
compare
your-
numbers.
So you don't have the numbers. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what's your feeling as far as, where I'm going to is, how's the COVID affecting this area? Do you have a sense of, or a feeling of, or do you have enough insight to really make?
I really don't have enough insight.
that's fine.
Anything would be a guess,
Okay.
I think.
And then there was one other note, and I'm finished. Thanks for the report, by the way. Very, very good. I think good for the information for the public. The note you made about intensive sex offender checks, what does that consist of?
That consists of, through our grant, we have 2 deputies, and of course, the sheriff's office in North Carolina, all sheriff's officers are responsible for registrations and things of the offenders when they get out of jail. Also, there's certain periods of time. I've never done that actual job, so I'm certainly not an expert in that. But what we do is we have these deputies to go out. If they say that they're living at such and such address, we have these deputies go out, knock on their doors, make contact with these folks, make sure they're there, make sure they're not giving us false information, just to, kind of keep them honest and, actually being where they say they're going to be.
Verification.
Verification.
And
That's right.
monitoring.
And they do that on a regular basis.
And is that, are we capturing 100% of registrants through that program? I mean, is everyone getting looked at?
Everyone,
Same as-
everyone that's in the
Okay.
county is getting looked at.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
John?
Virginia is thinking about going to legalize recreational marijuana. What impact do you think it's going to have on you?
As long as it's illegal in North Carolina, it's obviously going to increase some of our problems, but we'll continue enforcement. It'll be business as usual.
Only it's going to get busier.
Only it's going to get busier.
And
That's right.
anticipating people coming across the line since we are so close. Federal prisoners, what's our status on that?
We're approved.
But do you have any?
We don't have any, and the reason being is mainly for the COVID. We've been hesitant about getting some of those folks up here. We also had a little bit of turnover in the jail. We've had some retirement and some folks that left. So they're in school right now. They're getting trained. We'll be up to standards here shortly, and we are hoping by warm weather that we'll start transitioning some federal inmates in. That is the plan.
Just for the public's interest, the federal government pays better than the state government.
That is,
So if we house them, we're going to receive more income.
that's right. Quite a bit more.
That's all I have.
Michelle?
You said you had 33 IVCs. What's the average time that you spend at the hospital with those 33?
Well, they vary, but on average, I would say at least 2 weeks. I don't have that number. I'm just going off of being there, being in the environment, knowing how long these guys are there. But it's not uncommon for them to run a month,
So you basically have at least one staff person
24/7.
tied up 24/7.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Bobby?
I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, y'all made a large drug bust with federal and state and other agencies. Have we gotten that money yet?
That was the $50,000 that came in. Well, so not numerous. We've been a part of several. So the most recent one was probably has been 2 years now. And that is the $50,000 that I just reported. That, we seized over $500,000. The problem is, the federal level changed the amount of monies that we are able to take in from those. And then by the time you cut it between several agencies, that big number, after they've took it off the top, becomes a much smaller number to pull from. So that's what happened.
The miles that you drive was 230,000 plus the miles that you drive, the detectives drive, the sheriff drives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have at some point, would you have a grand total of miles that you all drive?
We don't have a grand total for us because how we keep the patrol miles is through our our records management system. And those guys do what's called patrol logs. So they enter their mileage. The detectives doesn't do a patrol log, nor do me or the sheriff do a patrol log. And there's multiple things in that patrol log, but one of those things happens to be mileage. And so that's the reason why it's easy to record theirs. We could probably get everybody's. We would just have to, on January 1st, everybody give me your mileage, and then on December the 31st, all right, everybody give me your mileage.
I'm just looking at, a few months ago that I think all the county departments are trying to buy gas at the cheapest gas station. You look at just the number of miles that the sheriff's department drives.
Mm-hmm.
When we can save 20 cents or 30 cents a gallon, that adds up to a lot of money.
It does.
And I appreciate you all trying to find the best price,
Right.
for your vehicles. The other one is, I think you said you average around 18 calls a day,
Mm-hmm.
day in and day out for an average.
Mm-hmm.
Of any of those, are any of them to deal with animal control calls where you assist the maintenance department?
They are.
Maybe, I think one day you said you had 5 calls in one day, but is it 1 a week, 2 a week?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, and we don't have that. Lots of times those get labeled as complaints. What I will say is recently we had 2 deputies and 4 maintenance workers out on one call for over half the day. It's when we have those calls, lots of times, they take a fair amount of time by the time you round up several or, have to deal with the person that owns the dogs. So they are very labor intensive.
Thank you, that's all.
Anybody else got any questions? We appreciate the job you guys doing.
Thank you, sir.
Very informative. Thank you.
All right.
April Hand.
And I need to hand out some paperwork.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Crash.
Morning. This is our monthly finance update, and you'll see you've got a couple of pages this morning. We've expanded it just a little bit by request of a couple of the commissioners. Year-to-date revenue, as of today, $10,665,726.67. Year-to-date expenditures, $10,198,040.19. And then the approved budget was $16,823,075. Revenue status, that puts us about 63.4% is what has come in of the budget. Expenditures, about 60.6% budget. and we're about 62.5% into the year with the budget. Bank balances of today, $9,650,668.92. Compared to a year ago, at the end of February a year ago, it was $6,558,838.83. In our unaudited, I keep saying unaudited, fund balance, $3,822,407.45, and that's about 22.7% of the approved general fund budget. Below you have the last three reports that I gave to the board. I believe that was a request from Mark a couple of meetings ago. So you can kind of compare where we're going. Questions about that portion of the report?
Just a comment that the fund balance is, the unaudited part, is growing just about every month. You started in November.
Yeah, I just
We
put
had
the
a little dip in December, but January's back up, and now it's getting up there.
yes,
I think
it's changing.
That's a number that everybody needs to focus on. And it'll be interesting when the audit comes out what the final
Yes,
number
what the
is.
audited number is at the end of last year. Yes, sir.
Anybody else have any questions?
Okay, your second sheet is something Chairman requested. This is actually just a detail of revenue from the sales tax. He wanted a comparison from last year to this year. The top of the report, and this is printed directly out of our system, and I just highlighted a couple of things. The top of the report is actually last fiscal year. At this point, it was from July 1st to the end of February. The county's portion, that would be our actual revenue that came in last year at this point, was $452,625.16. And I have that number highlighted in that top portion. The bottom part of this report is actually what we've brought in this year, our actual revenue, and it's $635,838.18.
Also continues to grow.
Also continues to
Right.
grow. Yeah.
Good indicator of what's going on.
Yes.
Yep.
So any questions about the sales tax report?
Questions?
Not really that, but just speaking of the audited, how's that?
They are wrapping it up. We have to, per the state treasurer's office and LGC rule, we have to have an amended contract. I just got that on Friday. The county manager's office, they need to review that, and we'll have that in front of the board the next meeting. And then it should be the 15th of March, the auditing firm will.
And just for the public's information, that's auditing last year's numbers.
It is. That
So,
is auditing
yeah.
last year, fiscal year 20,
Right.
June 30th, 2020.
These numbers we're seeing today will be in our next.
Correct.
Okay.
These numbers we're seeing today will actually be in next year's audit ending June 30th, 21.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. David Spicer, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. As we come to give a facility update as of today, now we've courthouse, we have, of course, awarded the bid process for that so that we can get some of the work started on the courthouse. We have a pre-construction meeting March the 1st, and the construction of that should start the week of the 15th. So hopefully they're estimating about 8 weeks, so we're looking forward to getting that part accomplished. We do hope and have met with them via a Zoom meeting, and certainly we've got some positive answers and some positive things going on with that. So hopefully we're looking at that beginning and ending very, very soon. As far as the roof is concerned on the front of the courthouse, I think the approval from the Historical Society, I think that's been granted. There has been some conversations between the contractor and the Historical Society, so that is in progress. So hopefully before long, provided that the weather gives us a little break, we'll be able to see some progress going on with the roof on the front of the courthouse.
David, let me interrupt. So that issue's been resolved?
I think so, yes.
We don't know for sure.
As far as the roof issue or with the Historical Society?
The Historical Society.
Yes, that has been resolved.
And we got that in writing someplace, I'm sure.
Yes, the contractor does have that, as far as I know, in writing. I have personally not seen anything, and I don't know if they have sent anything to the county manager's office as of yet, but that the contractors themselves told us that has been accomplished.
I think that at some point needs to be sure that the county manager gets that and that our legal counsel gets that, just to keep us safe in the future.
Certainly. The new courtroom facility, that's coming right along, right on schedule. We were there last week at the end of the week, and of course the sheetrock is all up and the sheetrock is finished. It's not yet painted. They're starting the millwork, so the moldings, the judge's bench, all of those things is in progress. The materials is there and just being put together. So a lot of work's been going on there, so we're right on schedule. Everything so far has been right up to date and pretty much okay. So that progress there is good. There's a few things that we'll take care of as far as the county standpoint, and we'll have those hopefully completed before the opening day of the new courtroom facility. As far as the communications between the courtroom or the existing courthouse and the new courtroom, we're on the track of that. So we're fiber that's going into that building and drops and those things, we've already had those discussions, and all of that's been taken care of and will be handled at appropriate date. So all that's good and everything's fine there. The transfer facility, of course, the grant was submitted, so I have got that grant submitted that the board has approved. So again, that's $39,902. Our part as the county is $9,902, and this is for the recycling program that we've got going for a compactor. So we're up and hopefully be up and running with that, provided we get the grant. I'm very hopeful with that we're going to accomplish that. So we'll be getting us a compactor hopefully and get our recycling a little further along. So we're still not going to be completely up to par, but we're going to be a little further along. We're working on getting a light. The light that's on the back of the building, the tipping floor building, that's supposed to provide light for the tire trailer and the chemical trailer, and it's not working. So we're in process of getting a new light to go up there at the transfer facility so that it's not dark around the back side of that building. Daymark, we're getting prices from contractors. I've got one in from a contractor. I'm waiting on one more so that we can move along with the renovations that was caused by the water damage over the Christmas break. Once I get that second quote in from the contractor, we're going to go ahead with that the insurance company, the adjuster, allowed that if we had two bids on that would be sufficient for him. So they will be awarding that through the insurance company itself. So that's going on. So we're going to have that and all those things going on at the same time, but it's okay. We'll get through it. The campground, we're just waiting for the ground to dry up just a little bit so we can move those campers back into their permanent spots there so that we can get that taken care of. So as far as that, the campground is all good and everything is fine. The gravel looks good. It's all dressed and nice up there. So everything's up to par there. The black building, we've been using the black building for the health department. And the health department, of course, folks know that we're giving the shots for COVID there at the health department. So we've been keeping up with that and trying to make sure that they have heat and that everything is comfortable. We've had to spend a little bit of money, but that's okay. We want to provide a safe and warm place for those people to go and get their COVID shots. So one of the heaters, just to let you know, was inoperable. It is now operable. So it has been fixed and all that's been corrected. The health department, we've got a little problem with the roof there at the health department. It's leaking. So we're hopefully, if we can get a dry day, we're going to try to patch that so that it gets us by just a little bit so that we can look at possibly putting a roof on our health department. So this weather is just hindering us in some of those aspects. In the sheriff's office, we're working on getting bids in for the roof on the sheriff's office. Of course, it's got multiple leaks in it, but we're trying our best to keep that water from coming from the outside to the inside. So we're looking at some bids for that, as most all of you know, and we're going to keep on top of that and hopefully get some answers very soon on those things. I was made aware Saturday about the LP tanks that's around the back. So you know, it's information that the ground has washed out from underneath the cement pad there. So the pad has caved in. And the tanks, they're stable and they're fine, and we're going to make sure that they're stable until we can take care of those tanks and get that done. With the ground being washed out from under it, I believe that this because of the earthquake damage. Maybe we just hadn't seen before. But I'm going to get up with Daniel and we're going to look at that and see if that's possibility of that. And hopefully, because it's damaged quite extensively, so it's going to have to be replaced. So that's just for your information, and that's something I've just been made aware of. So I've hit everybody with that at the same time. So as far as I know, the rest of the facilities, we're running along just right on the rest of them. But we didn't leave much out, but that's okay.
Who owns the propane tanks? Is that county owned or is
Yes,
that
sir.
county owned?
Yes, sir.
And the council on aging, that's still on track to be done by the 1st of March?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think actually February the 26th is the final inspection, as of right now.
Ain't long off.
No, it's not. It's a week from Friday.
Is the metal going on top of the old courthouse or some other
The
material?
contractor is looking at a PVC type roof. We had a long conversation with them about that PVC and asked a lot of questions. And the questions that we asked and the answers that we got leads us to believe that that's the best option. We have pictures and things that it looks just like metal from a distance. You wouldn't know the difference in it. And it has a easier way of the pliability of it, and the application of it makes it a lot easier and better and longer lasting for the courthouse.
Got any idea how long it lasts in metal, conventional metal?
No, sir. I don't know for sure.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
John?
Mark, I believe, had his hand up first.
Mark, go ahead.
Right quick, you mentioned the Daymark building and the repairs and the bidding and getting bids.
Yes.
And then you mentioned a couple other times getting bids. We've kind of had a few trips along the way of our bidding processes in the past. I would ask that you make sure that we're meeting our statutory requirements with any bidding that we're getting, because it's different depending on the type of services that we're pricing. And I would hope that you would make sure the manager and our council is good on the process that we're taking there. So, thank you.
The PVC is meeting the historical requirements?
Yes.
No problem there. Okay.
When will you hear about the, if we won the grant?
I think that's April, in April.
Anybody else? Appreciate you for your job you're doing. We thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Chamber organization, Ricky Brown, Brian Edwards, and Zach Brickalow. Well, say that.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Glad to be with you all. So just want to remind you, several months ago, Zach Brickalow and I came and talked about a new direction for our chamber, being really focused on economic development. And you all thankfully endorsed that direction. And I wanted to come today to just give you a quick update of where we are and the progress that we've made and some of the twists and turns along the way to where we are today. So, next slide. So if you'll recall, the original proposal, we talked about combining the SRC and the chamber into a new 501c3 organization focused on economic development and tourism. And that's what we've been working on since we've been here, trying to get that done. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we've had to go a little bit different direction. Nothing about the original purpose, but the structure, the legal structure. But before I get to that, I just want to tell you that during this period of time, we have been doing the work of both the chamber and the SRC, working on economic development issues, working on marketing, the SRC putting on events and doing what it's doing, historic district preservation work, et cetera, et cetera. So there's been no stoppage of the work as we've been working to finalize how we end up getting to a point of being focused on economic development. We've also made good progress on moving toward this new organization. We recruited Brian Edwards as our new president. Lisa Bottomley's been doing a fabulous job as our interim, if you will, director of the chamber and soon to be executive vice president of marketing of our new organization. We've worked on bylaws. We've combined the boards. We've been meeting together. We worked on our vision, mission, and values of the new organization. So a lot of work has been done. At the same time, we've worked very much on the structure, the legal structure of this new organization. And what we found is that talking to our attorneys, there was some risk of putting everything under one organization, talking about tourism, talking about marketing, economic development. There was a risk that if you donated to the organization, the IRS may not let us take that tax deductibility for a donation given the scope of the work. So we began to try to look for a different structure that would allow us to achieve our mission, achieve our ultimate objective, but do it in a way that did not run us afoul of any IRS regulations from a tax deductibility perspective. As we searched that, we found 3 other communities that were doing something very similar to us. Sanford, that area, a gentleman named Bob Joyce came up, had multiple conversations with us about how they structured their economic development efforts. We've looked at Winston-Salem and had conversations with them as they're combining organizations just like us. And then also Alamance County. Alamance County, Burlington, has an organizational structure just like what we think we're going to end up with. And all of those communities end up with a chamber, a 501c6, and call it a foundation, a 501c3, that allows them to be focused on economic development in both organizations, but run clearly in sync with IRS regulations. That's the direction that we're ultimately looking at going down. So we'll have 2 organizations. Think of it as one organization with 2 parts. An organization, our Chamber of Commerce, if you will, we're going to rename it. I'll talk about that in a minute. But then the SRC being moved into a new name, which will be our foundation, so that we can collect funds, raise money in a tax-deductible fashion, focused on economic development, and run these 2 organizations sort of simultaneously with one group of executives, an executive committee. The boards will be almost identical, so the work will be done in a fashion that will meet our original objectives, but just done with 2 organizations. We feel much better about that. Our attorneys feel better about that. It's being done in 3 communities already across the state, and all of them are working for the same kind of things that we're working for. So we feel very good about that. Ultimately, the Alleghany Chamber of Commerce will continue to be a 501c6 as it is today. We're going to rename it the Alleghany Chamber for Economic Development. The purposes would remain the same: economic development activities, support of tourism, support of members, etc. The staffing will be employed in that organization, and we will continue to show the enhanced benefits of being a part of that organization for members. The SRC will be renamed the Alleghany Economic Development Alliance. It will remain a 501c3 organization. It will fund and support economic development activities throughout the county, and will be one of the key fundraising activities that we will do in this new organization. It will house no employees, but the employees will work in both organizations, but would be housed in the chamber. As I said, think about it as one organization with one mission, but 2 parts. And we think this is a much more improved legal structure that's meeting the tests of our attorneys than we first had originally looked at. The agenda of our organization will remain the same. 4 big opportunities for us is economic development, data, etc., that we're going to be working on, bringing in new businesses and hopefully having new employment in the county, improving our wages, etc. Marketing and advertising, which will be a big part of the Authentically Alleghany, continuing to tell the story of Alleghany County, why it's a good place not only to visit but to live, market our county, advertise our county to get more folks, which would hopefully continue to see the kind of sales tax revenues increases that we just saw reported here just a moment ago. And then events. Continue to do things like the Mountain Heritage Festival, all the different parades, all the different events that the SRC and the Chamber have been working, but now doing it under one umbrella. And then lastly, focusing on our existing industries, agriculture, entrepreneurs, small business, and merchants. So the purpose of this organization that we first talked about is absolutely preserved, nothing different. It's just legal structuring being a little bit different. Go to the next slide. So if you think about the 501c6, the Chamber is a connection to success for businesses here in the county. Membership-based, nonprofit, focused on economic development. The Chamber provides resources and support for existing businesses, visitors, tourists, and helping folks relocate to the community. We are a marketing organization with 2 major functions, including helping membership enhance their businesses, as well as the economic development activities toward growing and retaining businesses here in the county. Next slide, please. So the 501c3, a nonprofit created to help foster economic development in Alleghany County. 100% privately funded by businesses and individuals, and doing that in a way that they get tax deductibility as appropriate to increase our county's employment tax base and expanding businesses as well as bringing in new businesses to our county. These funds are complementary to the public funding that is coming through the Chamber and will work together to improve the economic development programming, staffing, marketing existing industries and supporting existing industries, as well as bringing in new businesses, development of products that we can show the world about Alleghany County, workforce development, and other services. Now, next slide. You may think, and this is what we learned as we went down the path, is economic development a charitable purpose? What we learned is that the IRS is looking much more favorably to that economic development is a charitable purpose, and particularly in areas like Alleghany County, where our median income is low, our level of poverty is high, our level of students who get free or reduced lunch is high. All of those things fit the definition of why a focused effort on economic development is so important. And so therefore, donations to our new alliance will be tax deductible, as would be charitable donations. So charitable donations are clearly economic development in today's world. So we feel very good that our structure is right, our purpose is right, And Brian Edwards is on your agenda next, and I think what he's going to show you all is something we've been working on through the new organization, the Golden Leaf Project, working with the community college and others to help our county secure funding from Golden Leaf that might can help leverage our broadband capacity in the county, more training, et cetera. And you're going to see that that's one of the purposes that coming together and collaborating through our new organization, county, college, and others, that we can make a real difference in economic development in our county. So we're off and running. Brian is now an official employee. He came on board last week officially. We're now beginning to move forward with this structure. The filing of the documents has been done to make these name changes. We're taking our bylaws and making them a little bit different for each organization. The boards of the two organizations will be almost identical, but slightly different in the alliance to get some more community-based views there. But there'll be no competitiveness between the two organizations. They will work very much in a symbiotic way, and we think this is going to really make a difference for our county. And your support is going to be very, very vital as we go forward, as well as the town's support, as well as our community's support. And we feel very good that this is going to make a real difference over the next few years in our county. So I'd like to, again, thank you for your time this morning to give you this update. We're making progress, and I believe that we're going to get where we want to get. So thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Ricky. Bobby, got a comment?
What I take away, you're going to have two organizations that are going to basically do the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Are you going to have two different board of directors, or will there be one board that serves both organizations?
There will be one group of employees. There will be one executive committee, if you will, of the boards for both organizations that will be the same. The boards will be almost identical. We think the board of the Alliance, the foundation, may have a couple of different community members on them than what we currently have, but it will be no way that the boards could ever have any conflict. So the controlling board, if you will be the board of the chamber.
Okay. Anybody else? Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your support. We look forward to working together in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Next, Mr. Brian Edwards, Gold Leaf Grant Application.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. First, we appreciate the opportunity to be here and present. I want to specifically say to Ricky Brown and to Lisa, the amount of work that they have put into all of the study that Ricky just reviewed with you, in terms of being certain that we have the legal structure and organization that will allow us to go where we want to go. I'm going to be coming on a regular basis to talk to you about our economic development programs, but today my purpose is to talk about Golden Leaf application that was submitted last Friday. Now that's being done on behalf of the county through Wilkes Community College, and that the project would be a regional tech hub that would be located in Alleghany County. It would serve Wilkes and Ash in the same function, and it would be operated by the community college. So one of the reasons that you see there that we think we are positioned really well, excuse me, I'll tangle up here. We think we are positioned well for this type of a unique service. That first map you have in front of you shows the fiber connectivity in North Carolina. And you can see that upper northwest corner where we're located and that heavy concentration of blue. That's the broadband fiber connectivity that we have. And if you look across the state, there is no other region that comes anywhere close to what we have here. So we're very fortunate. We owe a big part of that to Skyline Telephone and to Blue Ridge Energy for their work over the past years to bring this kind of fiber connectivity to Northwest North Carolina. And I think it positions us in a great way for what is now becoming the remote working and being able to have services available that are based on this type of technology. So my purpose today is to request a resolution of support from Alleghany County in support of the Wilkes Community College project to establish a Northwest North Carolina regional hub. And you have a resolution in your packet today, and in a moment, hopefully, you'll be able to take that up. But additionally to that, on the back side of that heat map, you'll see the Northwest North Carolina Tech Hub. This is the listing of supporters who have advocated for this project that Wilkes Community College has made application. It's a $1.5 million grant to Golden Leaf Foundation that would support the training and credentialing of students that would equip them with what they need to be able to work for companies across the country, and they could work here in Alleghany County, and the college would be overseeing the curricula and the training that would be involved for these folks. There's already an existing network of employers, and working through these two companies here that the college would be contracting with, they can really provide job opportunities that currently are not available to this area. So I'll be happy to answer questions, but the resolution, and I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how much detail do you want me to go into that resolution, but it basically is just asking for support for the community college application.
Right. I think everybody understands the resolution.
I would move that we accept the resolution.
Got a motion?
Well, I'm confused. According to my agenda, we are to receive a new chamber organization brief by 3 individuals. Now we have suddenly jumped down into action where we're asking to vote on a Golden Leaf amendment. Now, I have some questions and I also have some comments, but I was going to hold them until after the presentation on the new Chamber of Commerce organization. Mr. Chairman, am I to assume that that brief is over with and that we have moved on into general business?
The brief is over with. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
If you have questions about the organization, I'm sure Ricky would be happy
can
to.
No, I'll reserve my comments for the commissioner comments.
Okay. We got a motion from Bobby to accept the resolution support.
Second.
Do I hear a second? Mark, second. Any further question? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0.
Thank you. We appreciate that,
Thank
and
you.
we will be coming on a regular basis to update you on the organizational efforts to improve economic development in Alleghany County.
Going back to this map right here, we all know how lucky we are to be with fiber optics, but we all understand how hot the retail or the land market is right now.
Right.
If you talk to these realtors, fiber optics is one of the big questions that people's asking when they come to Alleghany County.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
That's a selling point for this county.
Yeah.
And also, Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that.
Yes, sir.
One of the challenges I think we've had in this area was we have great connection, but we all feel like it's underutilized, and looking for opportunities such as this to be able to harness it and put it to work to get close to meeting its potential. So this is a step, I think, in that direction.
It certainly is, Mark.
Hopefully, if we're successful here, or if not, at least we have made an attempt, and if this is successful, maybe it will get attention of others, and we'll attract some others to the same reason.
Okay. Any further
Thank you, Brian.
questions? Thank you. Next up's line item transfer request. Who's handling that, Brett? No, 10.
Good morning.
Morning.
What you have before you, the first line item transfer is a salary line transfer with a request for $20,000 to be transferred into the part-time salary line and $5,000 into an emergency overtime line. This money is already in the budget. It's in the full-time salaries, and due to vacant positions and people being out for one reason or another, there are funds left to transfer so that we can cover shifts with part-time and emergency overtime staff.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
A motion, I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Second line item transfer is a request that I spoke with the county manager back a couple of months about. Some of the surrounding counties had allowed their EMS agencies to use some CARES Act money to buy necessary equipment and things they might not otherwise be able to get. So I have requested for EMS, the first item are PAPRs, which are powered air purifying respirators. Basically, they filter the air. During the time we're going through right now, they're good, but they're also good transporting patients with any infectious diseases.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0.
Okay. Did you want to hear about the second item?
The chest compression?
Yes.
I will note that whenever I was in training for the dispatcher position, I did on an occasion have a emergency out at High Meadows where both EMTs, paramedics, ended up working on the lady. I had to call in a chief of the local volunteer fire department to drive the ambulance to the hospital because she was not able to breathe on her own and they were doing chest compressions. It's my understanding that with the purchase of these two Lucas chest compression system, that would take over for a paramedic or EMT doing chest compressions and would not run into what I did that night.
Exactly.
And in doing so, I highly recommend that we authorize this, and we'll make that motion.
I just want some clarification. These are coming from federal funds, right? They're not additional
No,
funds from our budget?
No, in fact, I think these funds have already been received, have they not, April?
Okay, thank you.
Part of the COVID
COVID relief.
CARES Act?
It's
Or-
part of the CARES Act funding. They have been already claimed reimbursement. What we did is we actually claimed the salaries from emergency services for the CARES Act funding, so that strengthened the budget for EMS and law enforcement, even social services with their social workers.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
It's all CARES Act money.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's all
These
good.
are, we're just
We
transferring.
need to back up here. We done voted, right? Good deal. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to go.
Alleghany County Sheriff's Department, Mr. Hawks.
Good morning again.
Yeah, I'm here about 3 light item transfer requests and 1 budget amendment. These 3 requests are funds that I'm just requesting that's within our current budget. There are a few reasons for the line item transfers, such as shortfalls in the budget initially at adoption through a cut, and then also from federal grants running across county budget years. And this sometimes requires us to revert allotted funds at the end of a county budget cycle and not have adjusted for the remaining monies left to spend in the upcoming budget year due to these grants crossing these budget cycles. So, for instance, our federal grants start October the 1st, and they run through September 30. County budgets start, obviously, July 1 and end in July. So there is times that we allot for this money up front, and then for some reason, various reasons, we don't get that money spent out for this particular grant. We're not sure by budget prep time, thinking that we are going to finish spending all this money, but there's various reasons why you don't. Then you're already too late to get it into the next year's budget. So all these monies within the $8,888 from GCC to the GCC Capital, and the monies that I'm asking from the $14,822 from food and provisions to the GCC equipment, those monies will be returned 100% back to the county once we spend those for the grants.
Excuse me, but these funds are not on our agenda.
Line item transfers. That not
A
cover
line item transfer for $5,000, you've mentioned $8,000?
That is a transfer from GCC Travel
Right.
down to GCC Capital. Yeah, it's anything over 5,000, I think.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Okay.
They're described on
Adam,
page 18.
if it's not on our agenda, we can't vote on it.
But it is. So it's a line item transfer requested for funds over 5,000. And so
Okay.
the
All right,
line items
over.
that are being requested are included that are over 5,000. So there are 3 of them. It's
All
just not
So
specifically.
you're wrapping them all into one?
Well, there's 3 line item transfers and 1 budget amendment request.
Page
Okay.
18, page
All right.
18 there, John.
I can see the 13. Okay. All right. It's
So-
a little bit confusing there.
So I'll go
To
through
me.
them. I'm sorry. I'll go through them. The first one's 8,000.
No problem. I viewed them, and I can see where these funds are, but whenever I look in the agenda, we don't have a correspondence. And I'll make a motion to accept.
I've got the motion made here.
I'll second.
Need a second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand.
Just a quick question, is that motion for individual, or is that a blanket motion for all 3?
The 13,000.
There's
The
3.
13,000 would have to be separate.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
Commissioner Bobby Irwin made the motion, was that for all 3?
For all 3.
Okay, can we do it that way? We're good, okay.
We're good. I didn't catch it. Okay. That's for all 3 of them.
Of the line transfers, line item transfers, no problem.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? None, all in favor, raise your hand.
Okay, thank
5-0.
you.
Budget amendment.
All right, so for the fourth one, this is a budget amendment. This,
Okay.
the budget amendment is requested because these funds came available after this current budget year had already began. Therefore, we could not have anticipated these funds during the last budget prep season.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0.
Sorry for the confusion.
Oh, hey, thank you.
I'm an old
Thank
man.
you.
I'll add one thing if the
Yes,
board's
go
okay
ahead.
with that. The $18,550 is actually just going into their capital line to replace a vehicle that had been wrecked.
Okay.
It's not the GCC capital line. Okay, that was a mistake on the paperwork when it came to you, okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Volunteer Fire Department contracts.
There was a fire commission meeting where I think the volunteer fire department chiefs made some suggestions, and this is the revised contract with those suggestions in yellow.
All those changes are the ones that are highlighted in yellow.
Right.
And the general counsel has approved those.
Yes.
And I think the fire commission is satisfied with those.
I think so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, sir.
The fire commission may be satisfied with it, however, the chiefs are not. One of the bones of contention that has come up is the contingency funds that we have in this contract. I've had 2 volunteer fire departments and have heard rumor of a third that wants to know why the county is retaining these funds. They don't think that we should retain the funds, that they should get the funds. So I think that one change that we should make to the contract on our side, let's remove the contingency funding. We take it away, there's no argument. They don't want it, or, well, they feel that they should have it. They think that the county is exercising bullying tactics by keeping this reserve fund. So let's just do away with it. If it doesn't exist, we can't argue about it. That's the first thing that I would like to point out. The second, down there under Chapter 5, the way that we've written this, if we have a fire department that would like to build a substation, they cannot receive funds for any money that they are going to expend for that substation. One of the requirements that we have in this contract is that we want them to reduce the fire rating in their districts. We know that there are going to be, if we are going to reduce the fire rating or reduce the fire rating and the fire insurance in their districts, they're going to have to build substations. I would recommend that we place in there that we would permit in their budgets the reimbursement for the cost of substations. If we don't, why should they build them?
We all know the way they could go about this, if they put that in their budget, would be the only other way.
If they put it in there, but right now, we can only support their firehouse, their apparatuses, and things of this nature.
And going back to your first part up here about the excess money, that came about by rounding out the cents on the dollars.
Yeah.
That was all basically a freebie to every fire department, really.
Yes.
That's the way that started out, to have a contingency fund for each department. And now it became an issue of how they're going to access that, and that was never to be, unless they had an emergency, as I recall it, was to be used for if you drop a transmission or you drop a motor, something to that effect, you know, and they're well aware of how this is. And they was made well aware that we just can't hand this money out without them coming before the board. And that's, to me, we need to honor that. We need to stay with that.
We have a fiduciary responsibility
We do.
to know
We
where the
need to go
tax
into
dollars
this
are
year.
going, that are the
And we
community's
thought-
money.
We had discussed that, and we thought we had an understanding with volunteer fire departments. Now, all of a sudden, they're coming up, and the discussion is that we should be turning that money over to them so that they could put it in a bank account, draw interest on it. Now, I thought and I pressed for the fire tax just as hard as anyone in this board. I thought that we had an understanding that they were aware that we would build this reserve fund up, and if they had an emergency, they would come to the county commissioners. And if the reserve fund became a large amount, that we would reduce the fire tax, and so that they would have that reserve there, but not put any more burden on the citizens. But now they're taking issue with it.
Well, I personally think the way we have it, we're all thinking, and the way we set this up is the right way, because we're not withholding any funds that they're asking for. They're presenting a budget, we've created a tax amount, and we've generated the revenue to meet their request. Then we've taken an extra step to round it up to the next penny, and retaining that in a reserve fund, and that is the taxpayers' money.
Yes, I agree.
And for them to take it and just use it, and they haven't even asked for it in the budget. Election of duty on our part and our fiduciary responsibility for that to just be out there. I'm not saying they're going to abuse it, but I'm saying, how do we know if we don't, if there's not accountability? And I want to answer one more part about these substations. To me, that's a moot point at this time because we have made provisions, I believe, in L for them to submit a plan of how they're going to achieve better insurance ratings. Within that plan, I would expect to see whatever's necessary, including substations, equipment, whatever, you know, that they're all working in harmony countywide. And at that point, then it would be more work for the board to consider whether or not we can afford, and at that point, you know, what district it's in, and then could we utilize some of the reserve funds?
I agree that we have the plan in there, but we are restricting their ability to use the funds for that under the permissible use of funds, because we are very specific in this contract. Shall only be used for the purchase of equipment or apparatus, pairing trunks and pairing, or for the operation or maintenance expenses of the fire station.
Right. But that's the current funds that they're requesting for their current budget and operating needs for the year.
Right.
Okay. These are additional needs that would then go and apply to, in my opinion, the reserve funds. And that's a whole different conversation to have at the time the plan comes in.
Well, if we are not
That's my
specific, you know, they're objecting, they think that the county should not be keeping this reserve fund. We should not be rounding up. And one way of taking that point of contention off the table is, let's just write it out of the contract. We will, whenever we set the fire tax, we do it for their budget, whether it's going to be for 75% of what they submit or whatever, because if they submit a budget, we are going to determine how much of that budget we're going to support. And that determines the fire tax. Now, I've also had one department tell me, set the fire tax, never change it. Let us build up a reserve fund. We can't do that, especially with reevaluation, because we have additional, the property is going up, so we're going to be, if we keep the tax rate the same, more money is going to be coming in, and we're defeating the purpose of this. Now, a question about substations, if we all agree that they can build a substation and take out a mortgage for that, did they include that mortgage amount or that mortgage in their budget? And we can approve that? Well and good, but the way I'm reading that permissible use of funds, they can't do it right now.
There's a paragraph in here that separates tax dollars and donated dollars.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory too. The county controls the tax dollars.
Amen.
We're talking about tax dollars in this contingency fund. That's where it comes from. And the monies that they're raising, that's their pot of money.
Amen.
That come from the communities and community sport. And myself, I would like to see us finish out the year. Yeah, what we need to tweak both ways, because it's all new to all of us. I mean,
yeah.
Our first year in, you know, and this is an issue with the fire departments.
Well,
this extra money.
we're not discussing their money this year. We're not discussing the fire tax. We're discussing a contract. Do we want to get it in the contract, or next year after we've had a year to look at it, then we're changing the contract again?
Well, I would support that, because until we go through a year, I'm not going to know. I mean, get a year under our belt and see what we need to do.
I agree. It was rather disconcerting to me that here we are. They have received more than twice what their funding was prior to this. And we have not finished the year, and all of a sudden, the county is bullying us around because they're keeping this money. It was even said that we could take that money, put it in the general funds, and spend it on anything we wanted to. We were explicit that this has got to go to the fire tax, only goes to the volunteer fire departments. But they didn't bring it to the fire commission. They haven't brought it to the boards. So if my fellow commissioners, if you're satisfied with the contract, I'll go along with you. But what I'm saying is, if they don't like the contingency fund, remove it from the contract, and then there's nothing to have a beef with.
You know, this is for the learned counsel, but the way I read this, in the, under section 3, page 2, at the top, all rates were rounded up to the next highest whole cent to allow for contingency to be built, and if demonstrated need by the volunteer fire department and upon approval by the Board of Commissioners. We have the final approval of their budget request. Now, the contingency fund, the way that I understood it, was a separate fund to be put away for each volunteer fire department, of which some fire departments received 100% more tax dollars than they were getting before. One fire department was almost 200% more, and one fire department was 7% more. I mean, there was a big discrepancy between the two tax increases. But I look at this, the gray area that was put out by the commission who drew up our districts. That gray area was to be looked at in the future by a substation. And it was possible that two fire departments could commingle their reserve fund to help build those stations. Now, none of that's in the contract. The contract is redoable at our option, I guess, on a yearly basis. And I just don't want the substation part to be forgotten about. And I think that was the main thing in the contingency fund, because these fire departments received one heck of an increase in their budgets.
Right. I agree. Their objection now is the county's keeping money. They feel that they should have that money.
Well,
there shouldn't be a contingency fund. Let them have it all. And I can't agree with that.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'll make one final comment on this reserve. It is, by the way the process is set up, it is not their money. And it is each of us elected officials' job, fiduciary responsibility, clearly stated in our roles, that tax dollars are up to us. And that conversation, I think the way it's set up has to be had. Now, to give it to them, I would be in favor of I couldn't be in favor of a reserve fund and just freely giving it to them because of what I think my role is. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I think. And so, I'm okay with it the way it is. I think it's the right thing to do to have a reserve fund, and I think it's, for me, when I put all this together, as I say, their plan that's clearly required to be submitted should address these, as I think Commissioner Bobby called them, gray areas. Those are outside the is it 5 mile or 6 mile districts that anything beyond that is kind of in no man's land in the fire rating. So that's the areas that hopefully these plans will address, not only outside those districts, but then inside. There's some room for improving their fire ratings there. But it's going to require this plan and all of them working together. And when that's presented, then we'll kind of have some funds and some seed money for that. That was my whole thought process behind the reserve funds and trying to, because really, we all respect what they do. And I'm not harping on, It takes money to run these fire departments, and we're blessed to have folks give of their time. And I would gladly entertain the conversation with them and show them where I think my responsibility is different than what they're seeing. But going forward, here, the taxpayers are paying for this. We're not. We're just in charge of the money and how we're spending it. The taxpayers deserve to see this plan and this money invested wisely to help offset some of these initial, because they're financing this. It come out of their pockets with the idea in mind that that would be recouped by their savings on their homeowners insurance as they work together to reduce these fire ratings for their districts and for their customers. And we all have to work together to achieve that. And we have to have some money.
Mr. Chairman, I would be remiss if I didn't bring to the attention of this board things that have been told to me and the problems, the concerns that they have, and that's what I'm doing. Now, if this board, if you're satisfied with this contract, I'll vote for it. I've recommended that we place in there to remove ambiguity, that we be able to furnish construction of substations and equipping them. If you feel that that's not necessary, that this board will support it in the future, I'm fine with it. But I've made you aware of the concerns. They think it's their money. It should be going to them. I agree with you, every commissioner that's spoken. It is on our watch, our table, our responsibility whenever we vote on their budget and set this fire tax. And I have every confidence that this board will do the correct thing. But I've got to tell you that they don't like it. And if you support me, I'll tell them to lump it, because this is the way it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Michelle?
Well, this is all brand new. This is paving new ground. And I think, just from what I'm hearing from some volunteer firemen, there's just a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. And my hope and my suggestion would be that maybe we could table this and have them come with their concerns. And I think that it's a lack of knowledge and education about what is being done here. That would be my suggestion, because we need the volunteer firemen, and we appreciate them.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And we want to work with them, but I think that we all just need to get together and work this out.
Okay, Bobby?
Since the fire tax was passed, the county has been paying the fire departments on the monthly schedule. Looking at this, and without a contract being signed, this has been going on for 8 months now, maybe longer. There's a March the 1st deadline in here for each fire department to submit the budget to the county. This is the middle of February. Something has to be done here in the next, either today or the next meeting. But I don't know if there needs to be more clarification in this contract. If we approve this contract and move forward, we still have the option, I believe, to change it next year or the next budget. We have to keep this money going to the fire departments. We can't backpedal at this point. The citizens are paying this tax. So I'm just not sure that this is the best contract, but it may be the only contract that we have to meet the time frame. And I don't know if Heather needs to comment on this.
Well, I understand where you're saying the substation, if they wanted to spend their own money and put that in their own budget, then that certainly could be included in 5 for permissible use, because they're not coming and requesting additional funds out of that fund balance that would be there. So I can see how that could be part of their regular budget. but I'm not really sure that that is their intention. So there's some clarification that would need to happen between the fire departments and the board in order to determine where they're expecting that to come from. So I don't think you could necessarily just come up with something now and say, this is where we're going to put it, because I don't know if that's their intention. So there's a question there. So I don't know if you can just change that now. I do understand that we're requesting them to have a budget, so there is a time constriction there. So I don't know if there's enough time to get some clarification on exactly what to put in here now. And, if you're collecting that money, this is the first year for that fund balance. So until you actually have something under your belt for that too, I don't think you're going to know necessarily if that's something that you're going to have to adjust on an annual basis, if it's, how much money is going to build up in that, what the special request might be, if a substation is going to be a special request. I think there's a lot of unknowns that we don't have answers to at the moment for that. So, if you want to get something done to say that, we have a contract already done, you could certainly stick with what you have now and then, go back to them maybe and do a work session with them to determine what we could adjust, to make everybody happy and to use the best funds, whether that was, them coming through a budget, or whether it was them using the additional funds and how that would work, because I think this is so new, we don't necessarily know that information.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
In light of the time that we've been discussing this contract, we're looking at 8 months. I would make a motion that we accept the contract with the amendments, and with a provision that in 1 year, we would go back and look at it and see if the problems continue.
I'd like to finish out the year. Get it, like you said, good advice. Get a year behind us. We got something to back up and look at and compare to.
I'd second that.
That's to accept this contract in the board packet?
As presented.
Okay.
Yeah.
As presented.
Yeah.
As proposed, with proposed changes.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you.
I would, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I do want to make sure that the fire departments understand we welcome the conversation and we
Yes,
need
we
the
do.
conversation. It's not a us and a them. We're in it together.
Yes.
We win together or we fail together.
Exactly
And
right.
so
We
we
gotta have
don't want to
them in.
alienate anyone. I don't, and I don't think
Okay.
anyone else sitting here does either. I felt like this whole change was a huge success for them. Not going to, answer and meet every single need they have, but at the same time, it's much better situation than they were in prior. So.
We're in a lot better situation.
I will point out, as a fire commission, up until this year, this was brought all up whenever we were discussing it last year. I thought it had been put to bed, but apparently the embers were still smoldering. I don't believe it's been brought up to the fire commission since the changeover. It didn't come up in the January meeting, did it, Mr. Chairman? It's just the undercurrent that's out there, but they've never brought it to the commission to let us know what's going on. So,
Okay, moving on down. Town tax collection contract.
There was quite a bit of discussion at the joint meeting about this tax collection contract. April, Rita, Michael, and I met to talk about the actual expenses to the county, and this is the revised agreement.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So what were the fees based off of? What were the computations? How was it arrived?
The main difference was the time in the finance office to compile reports and reconcile the town tax collection.
How much money are we generating to the county from, had we been? I think our previous, this is a proposed 4%. previously our rate was 1.5.
1.5.
What was that generating for the county
1.5 was approximately $9,000.
annually?
How much?
$9,000.
And so what would this 4 generate
I
then?
think it came out to 24,000.
Up to 24?
Yes.
So if we weren't doing it, could we reduce the tax office budget by 24? So that test for me then would say that, I'm not sure that the way, just looking at it on paper, black and white in the numbers, in other words, could we reduce staff if we didn't do it in the tax office? To me, I mean, I'm not saying it's not extra work, and I don't know how much extra work, but I'm just saying if you just looked at it and tested it that way, I don't know that we need to look at it dollar for dollar, because if we don't do it, that's, the old number was 9,000. I don't think that's probably where it ought to be. How long was it at that rate?
As far back as
From the
we could
beginning?
find a contract,
Yeah.
it was 1.5%.
But I mean, if we're not doing it, that's that much more money that, you know, the county's going to have to put into the tax office budget to meet that loss of revenue. We're not? What I'm getting at, though, is, so this new number would generate 24,000, but you're saying you couldn't operate with a reduction of 24,000 in your department, annual reduction on your budget.
Correct.
Yes, that was the difference, was the
It's-
time the finance office is spending at the end of the
Yeah.
month.
But this is actual cost to collect their funds, right? Okay. Bobby.
Who has worked this agreement out?
It was from the county manager's office, working with the town manager's office. And the highlighted part in yellow is something that I've added in regards to a concern that the county manager had about properties that were in the town, because the county hasn't been getting a reimbursement for legal fees when they do a tax foreclosure sale. So we tried to come up with language that would be appropriate to get reimbursement for that particular situation.
Now, has the town manager looked at the yellow highlighted area?
I don't remember if Michael's passed that on or not. I don't know, because this was just on, was it Friday? Friday that we got this language together.
So excluding number 2, the town manager and the county manager, you and the town attorney, I guess, had worked this agreement out.
Yes, the yellow language was the only addition.
It's gone up from 1.5% to 4%. You know what the state average is? I mean, that seems like a big jump. I mean, I realize that we need to get reimbursement for what they do, but, I mean, is the town manager in agreement with that 4%?
I haven't spoken with the town manager.
No, but it is my understanding that the amount that is now listed in this contract is comparable with other counties, that it's not out of line with what other counties are paying for this collection situation. So I don't think it was out of line from my understanding.
State average something like 2.5%. If that's the average, that means there's a whole lot more and there's some less to get to 2.5% average. Well, John?
I just point out that the reason why we put in the highlighted area in paragraph 2 is in the past, if there was a piece of property that was sold on the courthouse lawn that was within the city limits or the territorial limits of the town, the county ate all the legal cost. Now it's more equitable because the legal costs are legal costs. They're going to be there.
It's either split between the town and the county, or if one entity gets the whole thing, then they pay the whole thing. It's like buying a house or something. When you come to closing, the buyer pays part and the seller pays part.
Exactly.
My question to the board is, should we look at approving this now, or should we let there be a conversation between the town and the county attorneys on item number 2, or does it suit everybody? As long as the town's happy and the county's happy, everybody should be happy.
Well, on that question, I would make a motion to table it for the the town's response for review.
It's my understanding that they have had a conversation, that they worked this out together.
They did. The only difference was on number 2, that highlighted language. That's the only thing that I don't know if there's been a joint conversation about. But everything else in the contract was handled together.
Well,
Second the motion to table.
and then the other thing is, they got a board to have to look at it and review it and consider it. The thing is, if we present it, my concern is if we present it at 4 as written, and they refuse to do it and try to figure out a way to do it on their own, and then we're losing at the minimum that the old rate, $9,000, this new rate, $24,000, with that, we're going to have to come out of the general fund to make up in the budget next year for the tax budget.
But you might could say also, if we're losing money doing this, it's coming out of taxpayers' pocket, that $14,000-$15,000.
But she said we couldn't reduce the budget.
But we're still losing some money.
If we, to the tax office.
I don't think anybody's wanting to make profit off this thing. It's just to get our costs back. You can't operate today what you did 6, 8, 10 years ago.
But what is our true cost? If we're not providing this service, if it's our true cost, we should be able to reduce the budget to that department by whatever the amount of money that we're going to lose by not having to provide those services.
It's supposed to be our true cost. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Could we hear from Rita?
Well, it's not Rita, it's basically the finance department. It's a cost in the finance department to do the follow-up whenever they collect the taxes. That's where our loss is.
We've got a motion to table in a second. Any further discussion?
To
table it to when? 15th for the first of the month?
Question.
Hang on a second. First of the month?
Whenever, as soon as possible. I'd leave it open. Next meeting. It needs to be done pretty quick.
I'll continue with my motion to table with the understanding that we continue under the old contract until a new contract is negotiated.
Well, no, we voted to take that contract back. We don't have a contract. And
True.
am I right
True.
on that?
Yes.
Yeah, there is no contract.
We did. Thank you.
Question?
Is this time sensitive for the tax office or the finance department to get this done today or at the next meeting? It's not time sensitive.
Next meeting will be fine.
My question, Mark, is, are you proposing that we table this till the March 1st meeting? That's 2 weeks for the attorneys to work out item number 2.
That wouldn't give they wouldn't have a meeting in that time to actually have a discussion and get the sense of their board members. Their meeting would be after hours.
You'll have a meeting tomorrow night, won't you?
We're not.
We don't meet.
We're leaving them hanging in the balance. We're not hanging in the balance.
Right, I know that's, to me, I think the urgency is for the town to know what direction they got to go in, because if they got to put a program together to do this on their own, they can't do it overnight.
If we approve a contract, they can either accept it or turn it down. That place takes the ball and places it in their field of play.
Bobby?
If I remember correctly, at our joint meeting, this was an urgency on the town's part to get this done. So if we put it off another month, what does that do to the town? Does that throw them into a turmoil? Or if the town needs to, they can have a special meeting with their board if they feel it's necessary, unless the two lawyers can talk to each one of their members and get their input. The mayor's here.
Their next meeting's in 2 weeks. The first of the month,
What
right
day?
after our, huh?
Day after hours.
Day after our
Yeah.
nightly meeting.
Well, let's just leave it as is. If they get a response back by our next meeting, if not, we'll
And we
see
got a
where we are
joint.
at that point.
Then we got a joint in March sometime, last of the month.
I just don't know if we're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah, we've hounded this enough, let's move on. We've got a motion and a second to table till
Next
Till
meeting.
when?
the first Monday meeting in March is our next meeting.
Does that give the town, that's my
They
question.
don't have a meeting till Tuesday unless they wanna call an emergency
And
meeting.
at that point, if we don't have any answers, we could table it again.
That's right.
If we need to.
That's
The
right.
town can always call an emergency meeting to consider.
Exactly. Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 5 vote. Get me worried in there, Bobby. Moving on, High Country Council of Government. Commissioner Mark Evans.
Yeah, this is something and I apologize for missing a month ago's meeting. This was a need a request made by the High Country Council of Governments. And as you, after the meeting last month, County Manager Carter had sent some questions, and Julie's here, the Executive Director, if you want to come up and if there's any questions. Basically, we all get caught up in the day-to-day stuff and the corporate documents and things can kind of get outdated, and I think that was kind of what happened here. And then I think there was some legal questions and things that come up where you were taking some action and doing some things, and then I even think you actually inquired with some legal assistance outside of your normal legal counsel, just to make sure that all these requests are in harmony with the way you're currently operating. Is that some fair sense of sort of what's going on here?
Right, I think just to put it in a little, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all. To put in just a little quick backstory, just kind of the anecdotal part of why this got brought up was because I guess I was about maybe a year and a half into this position when the budget was being discussed and passed last year. And, at the end, I noticed this discrepancy upon, another review of our charter and our bylaws. And I saw the charter said a quorum of 60%, whereas we've always operated with a 50% quorum as established in our bylaws. And so that was a big red flag to me, obviously. We were one member shy of having a 60% quorum. And so at the final hour, we called the board back together. We got the 60% quorum as defined in the charter to vote on the budget. In that time, I talked with our COG attorney. I talked with another attorney who reviewed everything in conjunction. So that's a little bit of the backstory about why this got brought up. So one conversation led to another with the board, and ultimately it was decided we need a subcommittee because this charter was written in 1974 when we were established originally by all the counties, the 7 counties in the region. And so we have some longtime board members. Some of those served on that subcommittee. We have a longtime attorney who's been around been our attorney since the 80s. That, and then we found a timeline that we were able to go and identify some particular meetings where we were able to show previous amendments in 77 and 85. So with all that information, we were able to deduce what some of these changes were, approximately when they happened, why there's a discrepancy, what the 60% was referring to, et cetera. So I'll stop there because that might be a little bit more than you want me to go into, but that's kind of why this conversation happened, why the subcommittee was established. So I'll stop there and see what questions y'all have.
I've got a number of questions, and I certainly understand why you're reviewing this. I've got some experience with bylaws and a few things of that nature outside of government, but just some of the concerns that I've got, particularly under voting. Voting on executive board shall be on the basis of 1 vote per member of the executive board, unless a weighted vote is called for under the provision of subparagraph 2 hereunder. Now, subparagraph 2, a weighted vote may be called for by any member of the executive board. Now, what concerns me is 1 member can call for a weighted vote, and weighted votes based on a population of 10,000. So Alleghany County, the small county that we are, of 11,000 population, we're going to have 1 vote under a weighted vote. So the larger counties, we're going to be standing by. We are basically going to be lost in the crowd. That concerns me. I'll let you answer that.
Okay, I'll start there. So I don't have the spreadsheet with me, and I wish I did because that's a great question. I think there's actually a little bit more than 1 vote for the county, but because now we have a 27-member board and we have much smaller municipalities that have, at this point without a weighted vote, they have an equal say. And so really it would be advantageous to all the counties relative to the towns. The counties do have more of a financial share, for reasons I can go into if y'all like, relative to the counties. That my understanding is that's why the weighted vote was established, was to really give more say-so to the counties and then to the larger counties as well. One other thing I'll mention is I've been with the COG for about 10 years. I've been in either, this position or a department head position for just about that long and have been going to the meetings. And I can only recall 1 meeting where there was 1 nay vote. So I can recall 1 meeting where there was not a unanimous vote. So typically, it's not necessary. But that, my understanding, is a protection to the counties.
I understand that, but the possibility is there.
Right.
The possibility is there. That I object to. Now, as far as your quorum, 50% of the members of the executive board, I am assuming, and you know what that does, that you are operating under Robert's Rules of Order.
That's correct.
Under Robert's Rules of Order, if an organization fails to do this, then with some exceptions, the quorum is a majority of the members. Subparagraph, majority means more than half. So if you're going to go 50%, you cannot have more than half by definition of Robert's Rules of Orders, and this is getting down to how many angels can fit on the head of a pin. I would suggest that you change that to 50 plus 1, 50% plus 1. And the other thing that concerns me as a commissioner, under financial matters, the executive director shall prepare and submit to the executive board a proposed budget. Now, that executive board can vote that budget in. If you dictate to us what our budget is going to be, then you are taking away from us our ability to control our budget. And as you've probably seen tonight, or this afternoon today, we're concerned about our budget. Those are the questions that I have and my concerns, ma'am. Thank you.
Can I answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the quorum, so because we have a 27-member board, 50% would be 13 and a half, and so we only count 14
Right.
at a minimum.
Which
so it's
you've
a
got to
little
round
plus
up,
0.5,
right.
so it's not plus
Okay.
0.1, but it's a little bit.
Like I said, it's how many angels can fit on the head of a pin, but you've answered that question. Thank you.
Regarding financial matters, and I know this is, this is just a tough one, I think, all the way around, partly because just in hearing some of the discussion today with some of the pay scales and things like that, it had been 23 years since we had adjusted our dues rate. And, that has generated a lot of questions and conversation, much of which I've really appreciated because it's been a great learning opportunity for me, just to be honest. But so it had been a long time, largely because, it's not necessarily something somebody wants to come in and do. But as part of identifying some things, and I can go into a little bit more of that part of the discussion, though it's related. It's not directly related, but it is to the discussion of the charter, so I can appreciate that. But the process of going through that is really, if you don't have, and I can say this from my perspective, and I feel sure that I can, speak to the board's perspective too, that if you don't really have everybody on board for a financial burden to your member governments, then it's not going to go anywhere. And so, the conversation started really slowly, like here's what I'm looking at. Here's some things that are changing. This is where we will be, and these are a couple of options. And so then, the conversation, kind of like the charter, it evolved from there. And really without having a lot of conversations, and I'll go back and say, from my perspective, we are owned by you all. We exist because of you guys. Y'all formed us. And so really the last thing, we'd want to do is put together a plan that would alienate or put undue hardship on a particular member government, because again, we exist to serve the region. And so that's just a little bit of the backstory about how in process that specifically works, because largely, almost exclusively, we're funded by federal dollars. The challenge is that for primarily our planning department, to some extent our aging department, they require like a local match, and we are extremely limited on how we can get that local match, and with interest rates at an all-time low, that's one of our places to get our local match. I think we're looking at couple $100 for the year to date, which is pretty limited. So that's really our challenge. So when they increase our matching requirements, we have to look to see where's that money gonna come from. Now, so that's where the con in having a lot of programs in the planning department that require local match. The pro to that is that we have one of the most robust planning departments in the state, and that we have a lot of extra federal funds that other of the there's 16 total COGs, so some of the other 15 COGs don't have. The Rural Planning Organization, which is our transportation arm, Economic Development Administration, and Appalachian Regional Commission. And I was telling somebody the other day, Appalachian Regional Commission match annually alone is almost $89,000 of that local buy-in. So I do feel like it's pertinent to kind of share, why the local match became a source of conversation, and what the board identified as a need, but then also just as a matter of practice as to how those dues are established. And so we just want to make sure that if, as we look at changes in rates and things like that, that that everyone's a part of the conversation. It's not just the board member, it's each individual board. And I'm always happy to come and do presentations like this, to help further answer some of these specific questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
Has Heather looked through this new proposed contract? And I know that the county manager had some strong concerns about the budget requirements set by a different agency on this county. And like it's been mentioned, money's one of our top priorities. I just want to be sure that, I'm not voting on something that's not been approved or gone through legal and gone through the county manager for his concerns to be answered. And I noticed, I think that I'm reading this right, that it takes a supermajority of your board to approve any amendments to this, to your bylaws. 2/3 votes
Correct. Yes,
to
sir.
carry that. And you have how many voting members?
27.
A 27-member board, we have 26-member local governments.
How many vote?
26, the local
26.
governments. Sir.
That's my concern is I want to be sure that our legal and our county manager are happy with the proposal. And I agree with you. If this bylaws are drawn up in 74, it's time to look at a change or look at rewriting some of them.
Do you mind if I make one more comment too? Back to the quorum, that 60%, I don't know if I clarified that. That 60% was in reference to a now defunct committee. So I don't know if I ever actually answered why we discovered the discrepancy there. So sorry, I just wanted to make that one clarification because I know that was one of the questions, and just in regards to the financial matters. I'm again happy to talk more or answer any other specific questions around that process the board or the attorney may have.
If you don't mind, I would address that. I'm not exactly sure, I can't speak for our county manager getting a response that he was comfortable with, because we haven't had that discussion since I think you sent an email to him about those two things, a quorum and about Section 5 under financial matters for C. So I guess the question I would still have would be under C, where it says, upon approval of the budget, the executive board, each participating government unit shall appropriate its share of the budget and shall forward that to the finance officer, its share of the budget. So that's where your board would then have a proposed budget, and then the counties that are on that would then still have the right to determine whether that budget would be approved or not.
Right, and I would say not as written, which I think is the concern, but just as a matter of practicality, because if we lose one member government, then that's not going to be the intent. So just as I had individual conversations with you all and the vast majority of the other local governments as part of the at that point it wasn't even really proposed, it was more just a mention and needing to be explored, the topic of the increased rates. And so partly the reason why that language was changed is because instead of the finance officer, I think it said council treasurer, which is another position that doesn't exist anymore. So those were some of the changes that we wanted to make, were just references to laws that don't exist or have expired, have been changed, or positions that don't exist. So I think it said to council treasurer.
It did, and then the other part of it, there's a lot that's now been removed. So it goes and it says that Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act, instead of, there was a lot of other language for different, I guess, agencies or parts of different counties to approve what that budget may be. So now you're using a different structure for how the budget would be proposed or approved?
Some of that I can't fully speak to because we're following the practice that we have for, honestly, it's probably been decades, but I've only been at the COG for 10 years. So, I'm walking into a practice that we've established for a long time. So it does make it difficult to speak to specifically when that process was changed. But we do follow the Local Government Fiscal and Control Act. And also it's just been so long since the dues rate has been changed. It was really since we added the RPO that we added that additional match. Specifically for that program. So I'm sorry, I don't have really a better answer.
No, but that does give some clarification. So correct me if I'm wrong now, what I'm hearing from you is you haven't been following what's actually in here for a long time. You had it written this way, but that's not actually what you were using in order to make your decisions about the budget and how they were voted on.
Right, partly because there have been amendments made along the way and the original document wasn't updated. So that was really the intent, was not, honestly, the intent wasn't to change how we function. It was more just to make our charter match practice and our bylaws and incorporate those previous changes, which, looking back at 77 and 85, it's just been a lot of turnover and, a lot of hunting down documents to try and pinpoint the best we can when these changes actually happened, so that we have that written backup to show why and when.
Okay. So here's my understanding, and this is something I probably would need to get back with Michael to make sure he understands. It's that they changed their process a long time ago. It's just the document never followed up to match that process that they were already implementing and using. And when they realized, oh, wait a minute, we're not conducting our business appropriately because it doesn't match what our charter says we are supposed to be doing, now they're updating that to change it. So fundamentally, they're not changing the way that they're billing the members, except for maybe a rate change, but they're not fundamentally changing how you are authorized as members to vote. That's the same. It's just now they're catching up with the times of what they really do.
Bobby.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this was on the agenda for action, but I would recommend that we table this until further discussion between the legal and the county manager and possibly your board or whatever's needed to resolve it.
Is that a motion, sir?
Yes.
Yes, need a second.
Second.
What questions are we looking to answer?
I think Heather's raised several questions. The one that she's raised, the one about the finances, the one about the 50, 60, is it 50 plus one, is it 60? And whatever other legal questions that Heather may have.
Let me ask, is this time sensitive with the COG?
It's not, I mean, as Commissioner Irwin indicated, that we need 2/3 of a vote. We're well on track for that. I'd like 100% because I don't want there to be lingering concerns from a board. Because if somebody votes against it, if a board votes against it, then to me that says there's lingering concerns, there needs to be additional conversation. So in that sense, no, sir, it's not time sensitive, but I just would welcome the opportunity to come back and further discuss, and I appreciate the opportunity to answer some questions
Probably table this for
today.
2 weeks till the first of the month. So, got a motion, second, any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? 4-1. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Chair's gonna call it a 10-minute recess.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sir. Call our meeting back to order. Next is, excuse me, telephone internet consultant proposal. 35.
Michael and I met with Danny Vaughn last week, and I've attached his proposal for his consulting services to assess what we actually need and help us put together a proper RFP. He proposes $40 an hour, and Michael's suggestion is to allow him to go back to Danny and ask how many hours approximately he's thinking. He was okay with the $40, but he also wants to put a cap on it, if the board's okay with that.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we accept the proposal with the caveat that that we limit the expenditure to $4,000 unless approved by the board. That's 100 hours, 2.5 weeks. Of course, if it comes in less, well and good. Let it meet the county manager's request, I believe.
Let him have that much leeway. Got a motion here, a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would ask that.
I've got a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Where, out of the budget, where's the 4,000 gonna come from? Out of our current budget?
We have a professional services line. I don't know if 4,000 is the number that Michael is thinking, but that was the motion.
Hopefully it won't be that much, but that's the motion.
If it goes over,
I just
we've
don't
got to
know that
approve
we
it.
have 4,000 in that line item.
I would have to look. I don't know for sure either.
We certainly need outside help on this instead of some,
Amen.
I think, to get to a good decision.
Well,
I
we
agree.
still have the appropriation for the telephone, don't we? We had a line item of, I believe, 35,000 in this year's budget for the telephone system.
We're still paying Skyline our monthly bills.
And we were anticipating a reduction if we went to a new service, so we're already going to be at a shortfall, I think. I think we'll be somewhere within our budget, but, Mr. Chairman, a couple concerns. I really like this suggestion of, letting this fella who knows what he's experienced kind of give us an idea of what he thinks it would be and let him set his own cap. But it'll be something that's neither here nor there. The other point I want to make, though, is if you just look at the information we have for the public in the agenda packet, this is an individual, it's not a company, and I didn't really see a lot there that sold me on his ability, and so I asked for and answered, and I'd like for that document that was submitted to us, I think we all got a copy of it, to be included into the agenda packet or the minutes, because it's, that's all this gentleman's ever done based on, so I'm comfortable with this as a knowledgeable person to provide this service, but I'd like for that to be accessible so the public could see that, if y'all wouldn't mind that.
Sounds good.
I'd agree with that.
I'd go along with that wholeheartedly.
It's an impressive resume.
Yeah, it is. It's all man's ever done, looks to me like.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got a motion and a second. You get that included on the motion there. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand.
Yes.
I vote.
1,000, but.
Northwest Regional Library Board Department, Susan Nilo and Lauren Globe, I don't know how you say that.
Barraclough.
I apologize.
Barraclough.
Barraclough.
I think that's how they pronounce it.
I apologize.
I will make a motion to approve, and I believe that the board owes a gesture of thanks to Pat Pauley. She's been on that board forever.
She has.
And has done a tremendous amount of good.
She certainly has. I go along with that. Miss Pat's a fine lady. Got
Go ahead with that.
got a motion. I'll second that. Any discussion?
Well, I noticed in her letter, there's 2 more for the Northwest Regional Library appointment. I didn't think that was on the agenda for those 2. Am I looking at that wrong in her letter, the last paragraph? The middle paragraph calls out
Yes.
Susan and Lauren, and then the last paragraph calls out 2 additional on the Northwest Regional Library Board.
Right.
Could we consider them all in the motion?
It's not on the agenda. So we'll have to do the next month. If I remember correctly, after being called down by legal counsel on numerous occasions.
So we're voting on Susan Ilo
Yep.
and Lauren.
And then we'll have to come back with Missy Weaver and Carolyn Sprinkle, is my understanding, sir.
First month meeting, okay? Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0.
Catching the next 2 on the next agenda.
Catch.
Rescue tax, streetscape, John.
As brought before us at the last commissioners meeting, the rescue squad is facing financial difficulties. It was not identified while I was the fire commission chair. It was news to me whenever they came in, and I spoke with Commissioner Osborne. I don't believe that it's been brought before you at that time. Now, going back over my notes, whenever we were discussing the fire tax, we did discuss a rescue tax, but apparently we didn't feel that it was necessary at that time. Since the rescue squad is now doing so much, and they do a lot for this county, but particularly whenever we are down to 1 ambulance in the county, they are our backup. Now, we've got to support them. Either that or we're going to have to add to our emergency medical service. And adding an ambulance and 3 more people onto the payrolls is going to be a significant hit on the budget. So I believe that we as commissioners should consider a rescue tax at this time. Now, if we do a rescue tax, we have a matter of contention. Ms. Temple sent an email to the School of Government, and basically they said you can continue doing the way that you're doing it right now, which is a portion of our general budget would be assigned to the rescue squad. The thing that comes out to me is that here we are again where we are going to budget what we can afford. We don't have to give them anything in the general budget. If we have a rescue tax like our fire tax, that tax that is collected must go to the rescue squad. So we would have to go through the process that we did, as I understand it, with the fire tax, where we would have to pass a resolution that we are going to have a district. It will be 1 district. It will be the county of Alleghany. The maximum that we can charge as far as the rescue tax stipulated by state statute is 0.05 cents per 100. And of course, whenever we add all of our taxes together, it can't go over $1.50. And if we even got close to that amount, we would be hung in effigy on the courthouse lawn, I'm pretty doggone sure. So I believe that rescue tax is called for. It would be, I don't see any tax as a minor tax, but it would be a guaranteed income to the rescue squad. It would help them to help with their budget. They would know how much they would be coming in. It's not going to be able to cover everything in their budget. They're going to have to go out and raise funds, and which in the past they have done. I mean, let's face it, that rescue squad has gotten out and they have beaten the bushes. They paid off the mortgage on their building. They have purchased a $500,000 rescue truck, and they wrote a check for it. I haven't seen their Form 990 lately. Usually they run about 2 years behind, but I dare say they're not in debt. But they do a tremendous amount for this county, and I would recommend that the commissioners consider a rescue tax. It be by district. There'd be one district, the county of Alleghany. Now, one area that if we wanted to do this, the town of Sparta would have to pass a resolution supporting that rescue tax so that they would be included. If not, then the town would be left out, and Rita will start putting pins in a doll with my name on it because she would have to figure a rescue tax for the county and not for the town of Sparta. But that is my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that we consider the rescue tax, and we do it by forming a rescue district, which would be the county of Alleghany, and we would meet their budgetary needs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Heather?
So I love the idea, and we did try to explore this to see if that would work. And I went directly to the source at the School of Government to determine if that process would be okay. And she said, unfortunately, no. I know we looked in a couple places in that section that she wrote in the county municipal government book, but I got clarification from her, and she said you cannot make a district your entire county excluding your city. She said that won't work. So even if we said we wanted to do that and exclude the city, that's not legal. She said you can't do that because a district cannot be your county excluding the town and then the town votes for it. She said that's not legal.
So we can include the town?
No, we can't have an entire district for the rescue squad, so it cannot include, it can't be the whole county. So because we are county-wide, that does not work. She said, unfortunately for us, because of how we are, she said it would just have to be that we could do an additional line item in our budget and say that we were allocating, that 5 cents in our general budget, and then we could, on our tax bills, we could show that percentage that we were collecting now in our general fund was now allocated towards the rescue squad, the rescue squad, but that we couldn't do a separate tax in and of itself because of the way that the statute's written. It won't allow us to do that.
Okay. We go back to the,
It's a general fund.
whatever the cents works out, we build it into the budget.
Exactly. And you do a separate line item for it, and you can put it in, when you receive your tax bill, you have the breakdown of where the money is going. She said it's totally legal for us to then take a piece of that pie and show where that amount of money would be going. But it is a general fund item because we don't have districts, and we can't have one that's the entire county.
It is what it is. The only thing that I dislike about going that way is we are at the general whim or the finances of the county. There's no guarantee. It'll be a fight year to year, just like it is right now.
Well, I think, there's a cost to setting up districts, as we saw with the fire department. This is one entity. And I think with a very well demonstrated need, even with the way the fire tax is currently set up, it is really the guarantee. Because isn't that rate set still by this board?
Yes.
So, really, the board is in control of funding through the fire tax the way it's set up. And so there is no 100% guarantee. If this board decides to cut it, it can cut it through reducing the tax rate and the revenue that it generates. So either way, this board's in control, and I think with a demonstrated need, I would feel like this board and hopefully future boards would recognize that, and then, I like the idea of identifying it from the general fund so that everybody can clearly see what's going to them. I want to help them because they are certainly filling in a big gap for us. So, but the general fund method is actually a lower cost to us by not having to do districts and go through that whole process. And I would actually move in that direction for the manager's office to kind of consider that in their budget and kind of propose it that way is what I would actually like for us to consider doing.
Heather?
Another thing, Commissioner Irwin mentioned that, they provide EMS. Well, from the last meeting, they provide a lot more than EMS. They provide tactical rescue, where they're climbing, and then scuba diving rescue. These are things that are not offered by the EMS service in our county. So some of these services that they provide, search and rescue, they're only provided by the rescue squad. So that's a service that if we lose it, EMS is not going to cover, and we don't have any other services in the county that would cover those types of things that they're specifically trained on an annual basis for, and they expend that money to do that training.
Right. But my point that I was trying to make is there's going to be a cost to us. If they aren't there for backup, we are going to Laurel Springs. However, Laurel Springs, as I understand, is doing a lot in Ashe County because of the mutual aid agreement right there. The rescue, for those citizens that are not familiar with the rescue squad, that came about from a tragedy in this county. And they have really done a lot as volunteers, and whenever we're down to one ambulance in the county, they pick up the slack. They're the ones that come in. They're the ones that are going to be at the house, so that if that one ambulance has to leave the county, they are our backup. If they have to leave the county, Laurel Springs picks up the slack on that one. I was just trying to get the feel of the commissioners to see, one, if we could do this. Now it's a budget process, but the budget process is going to be one that we're going to have to iron out with the county manager. But
If we appropriate a cent, does that come off appropriations as a line item for that moves them out of appropriations? Is that the way that would work? And if you put just an example on the tax bill, 1 cent, just like a fire tax, but you put 1 cent for the rescue squads, does that move that off of appropriations? I don't know.
All special appropriations come out of the general fund.
Okay.
Should be a separate line item.
I think everybody wants to help them out, and we need them. Yes, sir.
I think the need for the rescue squad is there. Heather has stated, it's more than just answering a fire call, a call for a wreck. It's search, it's rescue for Swiftwater Mountains. They go to Stone Mountain, they go to New River, look for bodies. Last year, I think we had a lady that was missing for a week or two, and they spent a lot of time there. I don't think there's any question about the need for the rescue squad. To me, the question is funding, how we can be creative in doing that. I think this board has last year passed a tax on the citizens from anywhere from 3 cents to 7 cents. I don't know what the appetite for another tax is. We're just talking about the rescue squad. You look at all the other programs that have been bought up, we're talking about 3 or 4 people at the dispatch. Every time somebody comes to us, they're looking for 1 or 2 people. We can't keep taxing Alleghany to death. The rescue squad is, for all these years, has made it on contributions. They had a big shot in the arm when the hospital used to reimburse them for the supplies they used. That cut into the budget very, very steeply. I think there should be a conversation with the rescue squad and the hospital to see if that can be reinstated. The county gives, how much do we give, Drew?
To the rescue squad?
Rescue squad.
9,000 last year.
How many?
25, wasn't it?
25 approximately.
25.
30.
The town gives 5. I think the town has spoken several times how important it is. they need to look at upping their share to the rescue squad. I think certainly the finance committee, when preparing the budget, needs to look at ways that we can help. I'm not a fan of taxes. I would like to look at all alternative sources first before I would support a tax. But EMS, they are vital to the community.
Michelle?
I just want to echo what Bobby just said. We just had a reevaluation on our taxes, which resulted in most people getting an increase, and we just had a fire tax, and, I just don't think that, I think handling it through the budget would be the best way to address it for now.
Just aside, I don't know how often we can keep bringing up this quarter-cent sales tax. But
Or why?
if the people of the county want to avoid an ad valorem sale or ad valorem tax, put that quarter-cent sales tax in and let these people that visit Alleghany County help pay for the rescue squad. We can put that sales tax on the ballot. I don't know if we have to wait 2 years. I don't know what the waiting period is, but specifically earmark that money for the rescue squad. That's a way that it doesn't affect just the landowners in the county. It affects everybody that buys a Coca-Cola, that buys a pack of nabs, buys a loaf of bread. The voting that quarter-cent sales tax down for the second time or third time, that's a blow to the budget of the county, and it's a blow to the departments that it would help support.
Moving on here, we need action on this to, we're just going to leave it in the
This is
budget
just a
committee.
discussion on that, Mr. Chairman.
Leave it in the budget committee, okay. Streetscape agreement, Mr. John Irwin.
All right, under the Streetscape Memorandum of Understanding or Support Agreement, any grants or similar funding sources obtained by the town shall reduce the county share on a dollar-for-dollar basis unless terms of the grants or similar funding sources specifically prohibit said reduction. I believe that we should ask that the county manager go to the town manager and see what the dollar amount it has been for their fundraising for streetscapes so that we can reduce the county appropriation or requirement. Also, at the joint meeting, we were advised that the streetscape had come in under budget, I believe $76,000. Based on the memorandum of understanding, as I read it, our total obligation should be reduced by that $76,000, bringing it down from the $350,000. Now, that is my feelings, and I am asking for the feelings of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
the last 4 words of that line you just read needs to be investigated unless the sources prohibit the reduction.
And that's why I said that we should authorize the county manager to investigate.
It's my time. In that ask, we need to ask for that evidence that is true or not true and just bear that fact out. And then we can have the conversation from there.
Well, we know that they've been doing fundraising. We have not asked how much money has come in. I've been approached by one gentleman that had given a total, to me, a fairly large check for the steps on the courthouse. No one has advised him what the situation is there, and he wants to know where his money is. There's a lot of things on Streetscape that some questions are beginning to come up we need answers on.
Was this a motion? Either one of you guys putting up a motion right here?
I would, yeah, if you want a motion, I would just ask that we ask the town for the evidence to bear out the details of the fund sources to answer that question, and then at that point we can. But the comment about fundraising for courthouse steps, those belong to the county.
That's correct.
I
We
don't know, have we-
we authorized the streetscape to raise those funds to replace the courthouse steps.
I'm not so sure we did that.
I believe we did.
I would want to ask to see that evidence too.
But they're collecting funds for it.
I think that was the SRC. They asked for the board's approval to include that in their fundraising campaign.
Then maybe they could give us an update on
And they should-
whatever that is.
Yep.
Was that for the courthouse?
So that we can let the
Steps,
public know
or-
what's happening.
Yeah, it was for the courthouse steps.
We'll let the, ask the town for the details on the fundraising. Is that where we're at here? Is that-
Let the county manager do the liaison, find out what's going on.
Get a motion for that?
I'm gonna make a motion, sir.
I thought I made a motion in that regard.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Let the town manager, county manager talk to town about the fundraising details.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Consent agenda, Ms. Rita Miller.
Sources and fundraising sources being dollars for the street project.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
So, vehicle tax refunds, 111166. Real and personal property was 68256. Releases, real and personal, 214523.
Okay. Have any questions?
Need a motion.
Need a
sir.
motion.
Make a motion to accept, sir.
Got a motion here, a second. I'll second that.
Just a question, this is under the consent agenda, are we gonna go through item by item or accept the whole consent agenda?
Usually do the whole thing.
Whole thing go together. We usually do the whole thing.
I have no questions, and we'll make a motion to
Accept the whole
accept the
thing.
consent agenda.
We had a motion to accept the whole thing. We got a second to accept the whole thing. All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Rita.
Thank you. We've got 3 tax foreclosures coming up on March the 16th. We don't know the opening bid yet, so as soon as we have that, we'll get that information out to the citizens.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
County manager's comments.
If you will, please look at the January building inspections report. Michael also asked me to share, the new rec director starts the end of next week. We've been approached by Grayson County to possibly join their league when rec sports start, whenever this board decides. So we're on the Zoom call with the Tar Heel League a couple of weeks ago. It was right after our first of the month meeting. And that would include, of course, we said Ash, Watauga. Those would be the 2 counties that we would play against. And then Grayson has approached us, and also Surrey has started their rec sports back. So when the new rec director starts, I'm sure he'll be bringing that decision to this board. Michael also wanted me to remind that budget submittal is this Friday at 5 p.m., so we'll start budget meetings shortly thereafter. He also recommended that this board set a special meeting prior to the March 1st regularly scheduled meeting for the 911 discussion. If y'all would like to look at your calendars and let me know.
Add that to our work session, or is he wanting a different one?
He wanted it prior to March 1st. if
Prior to
possible.
March 1st.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look at my schedule at the house, because I know I've got,
25th or 26th?
I know I've got a VA appointment and a doctor's appointment. I'm just gonna have to give the dates at that time.
That's fine. Y'all can just email me if you'd like to.
Okay.
All right,
We'll just-
thank you.
we'll just email her.
25th, 26th, good with me.
We'll just email her. She'll send out an email. and we
Yeah,
can-
actually, the whole last week's good with me.
Okay,
I got a question for Drew.
okay.
When is the recreation, the new rec director going to be, start work?
30 days, that was the notice he agreed to work out. I think he told me this morning that is the 23rd. That's his last shift. And they work a 24-hour shift, so Wednesday is probably out. Thursday or Friday of next week is going to be his first day.
Thursday, but sometime end of next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. County Commissioner comments. Ladies first. Go ahead, Michelle.
Ladies first.
All right. I just want to say that being on the board, I have the opportunity to be on several different boards around town, and I just want to take a moment to highlight one of those, and that is our Department of Social Services. A lot of people, I asked them what they wanted me to say to the general public about what they do, and they said they feel like that they're kind of misunderstood, that the general public thinks that they just maybe, come in and do CPS reports and that sort of thing. But they do so much more than that. They do child protective services. They do adult protective services. And actually, we have 50 kids in this county in foster care right now. They also do food stamps, and they have over 700 people enrolled in that every month. They do child support, which they bring in $50,000 a month in child support to give back to those children. They do emergency assistance for people for heating. They do guardianships. They do Medicaid management. They do refugee assistance, and that's a new thing that has come up for sex trafficking victims. There's federal money earmarked for that, and we actually have one person in the county who does receive those funds. They also do cremations for indigent people. They have that in their budget to help pay for that, and they do treatment for substance abuse. They have funding for that. So they do a whole lot more than what people think, and unlike a lot of government agencies, they have a huge reimbursement from federal and state funds. So they are probably the cheapest or the best deal that we have in the county as far as money goes for what they do and the reimbursements that they get from the state and local government as well as the federal government. So I just want to give a shout out to them. I've been a social worker before. That's a tough job, and it's a thankless job, and I just wanted to spotlight them today.
Thank
That's
you.
all I've got.
Commissioner John.
One of the things that we're going to have to do as a county, especially whenever we start looking at our budget, is we've got to figure out what in the world we're going to do. Whenever we started looking at economic development, we've got our Alleghany County Economic Development Committee, a committee that did not meet for 6 years until I brought them up and started highlighting them. We've got $74,000 in the bank, and the only reason they exist is a loan to run the water sewer out to the Alleghany County Group Home. Alleghany County Group Home is doing quite a bit for the county, and they are making a payment once a year. Oddly enough, the health department in Daymark is on the same water line and the same sewer line, and the county's not kicking in anything. Now, part of the charter for the Alleghany Economic Development Committee is economic development. It's in its name, and if you go read its Form 990, it says that it is for economic development of Alleghany County. As Bobby Irwin said, where were they whenever Grants was looking for the $25,000 grant? They had the money, and they could have gone there instead of out of the taxpayer's pocket. Here again, we have Blue Ridge Development Center, or BDC. The contract with the county states that they are going to do the economic development for Alleghany County. And now we have two other organizations going to come in and do economic development. Now, they can form and they can do what they want. They are 501c3s. They are corporations. We have absolutely no control over them other than the $10,000 that we give to the BDC, that I'm going to make every effort to rewrite that contract, get them out from under it, and the county not pay them anymore. I do not like it as a commissioner whenever we authorize county funds to go to organizations that we have no control over. 501c3s, I don't know why in the world we got into the habit in the past, and it certainly is this board, but in the past, everything went to a 501c3. The County Board of Commissioners lost the daggone control. It's something that I believe that we've really got to sit down and have a heart-to-heart about whenever we start talking about the budget. Now, can we stop these 501c3s from doing economic development? Nope. Can we change them in any way? No, they're independent. They can do whatever they want. That's why I have advocated, I will preach and I will teach that we need an economic development person in the county employ where he will answer to the county manager and the county manager answers to the commissioners. That way we can keep a finger on the pulse of where our funds are going. I salute these organizations if they're going to do their job and bring in economic development. But if you start looking at all the organizations that we've got in this daggone county to bring in economic development, we should be at full employment. Instead, we've got a Main Street that's getting pretty doggone deserted. If we keep this up with for sale signs going out of business signs on the Main Street of Sparta, we're going to have the best looking ghost town in the state of North Carolina. Going in many directions with different organizations is not going to help us. We've got to come together. That I can agree upon. But at the same time, if we put money out there and we can't control it, then boo on us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Martin.
I would like for us to consider as a board to have a joint meeting with the school board to kind of hear what their capital needs are. They'll be coming to the budget, and I think give them an opportunity to make their case for them, their current and maybe 3 to 5 year and then long term. And as kind of Michelle mentioned it a while ago, the revals folks have gotten their numbers back, and if their value goes up, it doesn't necessarily translate to an increased tax cost, because that will be determined in this next budget and what rate we set. It could be set at a revenue neutral rate, which then would drop the current tax rate, and so the tax amount could be the same. So just putting that out there, and I'm really telling myself that because it makes me feel better to think that hopefully there's opportunity that it's not going to translate dollar for dollar. I was excited to see the presentation from the new organization. Forward to that. More to be done. And then, of course, early on, hopefully we'll see what their metrics are going to be used for determining what success really looks like. I feel like the caliber of folks that are involved in that will follow up and do us well as a county. And I want to speak to what I feel like I'm a part of here. We have limits. We have limited budgets. We have statutes that tell us to do things that we maybe not necessarily like to do, or the way to do it, and then they make us do things that we can't. They don't give us any money to do some things with. But where we stop, these 501c3s oftentimes pick up. And a lot of the funds that we put into them are leveraged to go out for a lot more dollars, grant dollars in a lot of cases. Maybe not every case, but I think it's our role is to ask, trust but verify, ask for that accountability. But I think we would be in bad shape if it weren't for so many of these selfless folks out here involved in these 501c3s, whatever the case may be. And I think we should realize that as a partnership and have conversations if we don't know what they're doing, to reach out to them. and to make sure that we understand what they're doing so that we feel like it is a partnership, it is a win-win. If not, then, you know, it's obviously we can question anything, but I just think as a member of this board, I just want the public to know that that's my approach and my philosophy is it ain't all on us. There are so many people that are big-hearted people that are giving selflessly across this community to really make it what it is. It's not all because of what we're doing. You know, we're doing a lot and we have a lot of responsibility, but there's so much more that goes on out there that I'm very appreciative of, and that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Bobby?
I think from what Mark is saying too, that the general public needs to realize that we get so many unfunded mandates from the state and federal government that we have no control over, that we have to fulfill those obligations. And that puts a burden not just on the commissioners, but on the taxpayers of the county. The other thing is the COVID-19, our health department is working literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to keep people vaccinated in Alleghany County. We're 3 county regions, Watauga, Ashe, and Alleghany, but we're concerned with Alleghany. And the fairgrounds has worked out great. They've had some minor problems with the heat. It's not minor when you're sitting in there freezing, but they've worked through that and they've got it going pretty smooth right now. We just need more vaccine to give to people that are in need of it. That's the big thing. Other than that, the farming community in Stratford is forming a co-op. We're selling mud. We had a sale over the weekend of a nickel a bucket. We're cutting that in 50%. And if that doesn't work, we'll pay for you to come and haul it off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. It's hard to top a talk like that, you know, but I just echo the same sentiment the rest of them does. I'm proud of our county and I'm proud of what's going on. And Ms. Ham's report about the sales tax, that gives you an idea of how things is going. It ain't totally, but it's a pretty daggone good indicator, and there's a lot of good things going on, a lot of good things going to happen. And we need to always stand behind that, and we all work this thing and go together. I appreciate you. If anybody has anything else, good meeting today, I want to say. A lot of good dialogue and a good meeting. If not, I'll entertain a motion to.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Eat lunch. All in favor?